Hello, Brian.
Hello.
That is the best intro you're gonna get. It's just me unplugging my phone. So yeah, some stuff's going on. I don't know how much you want to introduce yourself or at all. But I can leave it as I found this guy on the street, or you can tell people a little bit more about yourself if you want to.
Hi, my name's Brian. You found me on the street.
Perfect. So I've been on this. I started, I guess, making these series of videos on Monday. Was the first one I recorded, and should actually be coming out in a couple hours. More, I guess, just diving into like some of the stuff that's going on, and trying to get other people's takes on it, because I feel like I know where my headspace is on it, but I feel like it would do me better and probably other people better to hear other people's takes, and then from that maybe make a more educated, I guess, having a more educated opinion on things. So to frame that, an anonymous user made it a point not to name him, so I won't. I think I'll actually superimpose it over. Man, it's super long, so I'm going to try to run through it really fast. We talked a lot about like the first half, and feel free to go back over it if you want to. If you hear anything that you're like, hey, let's talk about that. Actually, better said, I'm going to start reading it, and if there's something that jumps out at you, stop me, and we'll go in from there.
We're gonna get 3 sentences.
Probably, yes. Which is fine. This is fine. No. We're gonna try to get through it though. Okay. So it starts as, hey, I saw your post about making a podcast discussing race with a panel of people. I am personally really interested in this. I am curious to see if anyone on your panel has a truly hot take. What does addressing race mean? How do we rationally approach these issues? What are the perceived problems, and what are the real problems? Where do we go from here? Truly, the death of George Floyd was a tragedy of police brutality. It highlights the increasing brutality of the police, the underlying racial tensions in the country, and a whole bunch of other things that result in a reaction of some sort. This reaction presses the issue of whether or not the rioting is justified. In my opinion, these riots are not a form of protest, but the predictable results of ongoing trends. We live from snapshot to snapshot. For me to continue, I'm going to say that while I wish to appear and speak on your show, I really cannot afford to. I truly feel that if it is exposed that I have wrote this message, that my social life would be shot, and I could be doxxed, etc. I implore you, though, read this aloud on the show. Just please don't use my name. That being said, this piece is projected from the mind of a white man. What does addressing race mean? Americans seem to be constantly reminded that this country is a supremacist, intrinsically racist, biased, and rigged system. This itself has given everyone a particular bias all on its own. People like to feel good, so they are naive to what they consume. Where we are now is a place where everyone has a similar opinion. The idea that the system is indeed corrupt and rigged is common. I believe the system is indeed corrupt, but personally I think it's apparent that the system is not a pro-white monolith. If you hold a belief like mine, you are again reminded of all your inherent evils and are forevermore branded as the personification of these decreed social ailments. It is almost scripted how we view our societal issues. In quotes, Black killed white is front and center on our screens and in our collective consciousness. It has been for a long time. The issue I see as the most prolific regarding the Black community is that Black people do commit a large proportion of crime. American Black people specifically, but generally, already have an animus against the system. They were enslaved. There used to be laws specifically opposed to Black people, and at one point, white people ostracized them, so they riot, and the general public is torn. Something I have noticed about white people is that they're generally very gullible and pretty naive. It doesn't shock me to see a white woman call the cops on a Black guy in New York. Just like how Black people have stories about white people, every white person, including myself, has a negative interaction with a Black or brown person, or has known someone who has had. They fail to see the societal trend of malcontent directed at them. Some whites are of the opinion that white quality of life is eons better than Blacks, for example. They refuse to believe that Black people have any ability to commit crimes or do anything but be some kind of living wretch who has always been downtrodden, oppressed, and couldn't possibly make it without help. White people have problems too! Exclamation points there. I didn't really do that justice, but declining birth rates, rising suicide rates, widespread mental illness, drug abuse, depression, and more, I'm sure. A glaring issue is that white people have lost their racial identity, only hyper-focused on our collective perceived historic wrongdoings. It's like white people are only capable of apologizing and groveling about race. Can I pose a radical idea now? What if every race of people were different? Suppose black people need a black exclusive... let me read that back. Suppose black people need a black exclusive school curriculum, possibly a black exclusive police force. And in quotations, no, you can't have that. It's just segregation all over again. Then what more can we do? Every solution involves the system. The system is oppression. Every activist who is against the system wants to try and change the system some more to hopefully improve the lives of black and brown people. The thing is, this has been happening for years and we haven't really seen any improvement. Assuredly, the word racist is running through some of your minds. Why is it racist to speak out about the issues that face the black community? If it is the humane and logical thing to do, black men are at risk of being killed by other black men. We are trying so desperately to bend the system into something that helps, and still we see so many black men in prison. Here's another revolutionary thought. What about just ceding some land to a black colony? Give them a grant, trade rights. I love your reaction. It's so good.
That's good.
That's good. Okay. All right. So
I was almost there.
Yeah. So
I was like, okay, not understanding, but all right.
Yeah.
All right. Now, all right, you lost me there.
The thing is, like, when I hear or read stuff like this, my gut reaction isn't like, oh, this guy's terrible, he's a bad person. It's more of like, I think it's someone who's looking at the situation with like purely like scientifical like eyes. There are no like emotions. There's no like there's logos and egos. Is that the other one? I don't know. I forget what the other term is for that. But it's all just like, hey, we've tried this and this didn't work. It doesn't really go into why it didn't work or like how you could fix it or anything like that. It's just like, I want to try new things.
I think a lot of the big things this person is missing is that his thought process is that we have gone through every iteration of races intermixing and has failed because of the races itself failing, where it hasn't had the proper justification to fail yet. Like you and I, where all of the races mixing, it African Americans, Black people, they have not been able to fairly be allowed in the society without and like live in society the way white people have lived in society. So saying, oh, we should just separate them, that's not fair. Like you haven't tried to let them live in society the same way white people have. So why would you want to separate them yet? Like saying that oh, Black people don't have to live in fear, and it's like, well, this George Floyd thing does show that Black people have to live in fear. Like, I can get stopped by a police officer at a traffic stop, and at no point am I, like, if I am alone and white, that I'm going to fear for my life unless if I've done something really dumb. However, if you get pulled over by a police officer, I'm assuming there is a fear of, oh, is he going to ask me to step out of the car? Is he going to talk to me? How is this going to happen? And, like, I can be more rude to a police officer than you can, and that's not right. That's not fair.
That I think is true. I would say my experience with police officers is very different than other people's. My mother, growing up, she worked in law enforcement. So, like, I was exposed to a lot of cops, like, growing up. I had a police officer teach me how to drive a stick shift, like, when I was growing up. Like, I've never really had any bad interactions with officers. That being said, I understand, like, that's not, I don't know, I don't want to say rare is a thing. I'm sure that's, if I looked at the numbers, I'm sure that there are more people who, like, more Black people that have normal interactions with police officers than there are that have bad ones. But the number of people that have bad ones is still a number that's not acceptable. So like, I don't want to say that my experience is rare, but it's, I have to realize that I grew up around that stuff. So like the way that other people perceived it, or the way that other people would experience that, and the way I experienced it, are completely different. So like, even now, like when I don't live in the city where she worked, but now if I get pulled over in where we live, like that thought doesn't really run through my head unless something triggers it to happen. So like, if I'm getting pulled over, I'm not, the first thing that kind of goes in my head is like, oh, okay, was I speeding? Yeah. All right, cool. Like, and I'm very like, just, I tend to be a lot more relaxed. And I'm trying to think if I've had like, I haven't got pulled over here often. I think I got pulled over for a tail light at one point, like once. And oddly enough, that reminded me, I didn't have my seatbelt on at all, and he didn't give me a ticket or anything for it. Didn't even mention it until like he walked away. He's like, "Hey, put your seatbelt on." I was like, "Thanks," and then like did it. So I know that that's not the focus. It's not, the focus is not necessarily on like the good interactions. It's on the bad and why the bad happened, and like how can we stop the bad from happening. But I don't feel it's right to use myself as an example in that. If that makes any sense, but I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, you're fine. Like there are people that have had negative interactions, and that one negative interaction with a police officer will haunt you to your days. Like I was pulled over about 15 years ago now, and my buddy and I were going over to a friend's house to play Halo, and that's all we wanted to do. And
I think I still have a copy of that thing over there.
He was black.
Yeah.
We got pulled over. My tag was out of date, so automatically red flag right there for the police officers. And my back window was missing.
Okay. This is an interesting vehicle.
I was young. So the police officer walked up and asked me to get out of the car.
Okay.
This was, I think, the second time I'd ever been pulled over before. And I walked out and I was talking to him. As I was talking to him, another police officer showed up. And that police officer walked to my car and started speaking to my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I'm having a conversation with this police officer, and at some point the conversation was very weird in the sense that like the police officer started asking me questions like where I was from, and I told them Orlando, and I thought it was weird he was asking me where I was from because he was looking at my license. And I was like, oh no, where were you born? I was like, Boston.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, where were your parents born? I'm like, I don't understand. I don't know, Washington.
Yeah.
like I didn't know how to answer.
Like, what is the purpose of this question?
Yeah. While I was being interrogated with these weird questions, the police officer talking to my friend suddenly pulls out his gun, and he tells my friend that he's going to shoot him if he moves again, in much more vulgar.
Wow.
Capacity.
Okay.
I immediately turn around to see what's going on, and I see this, and the police officer behind me grabs my back loop of my pants, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I didn't what a logical person would do in this situation. Throw your hands straight up in there.
Yeah.
Like, again, to this day, I still don't fully understand what's going on. From what my friend told me is he was being talked to by the police officer, and the police officer, or a fly landed on him, and he slapped the fly off his knee, and the police officer freaked out and grabbed the gun and pulled a gun on him. That is like what I remember. Again, this was 16 years ago.
Sure.
But like yes, my friend was very large. He was over 6 foot tall, but he was sitting down.
Yeah.
And like,
sure.
What point is he intimidating? Like, I don't like, so that I never understood. And even with that interaction happening whenever I was I was 18 or 19 or 20 or something like that, when that had happened, I had always had more of a belief of how you say of the like there's a lot of negative reactions to police officers, but there's also a lot of positive reactions to police officers, and you can't just like, there's only a few bad apples type things. But who says that police officer was a bad apple? And maybe he legitimately was fearing
Sure.
of my friend, and that itself is a problem. Like, you can't go into an interaction fearing the people you're going to talk to. Like, that is something that is a problem. And at the same time, now my friend has this memory of having a gun pulled on him. Now he's going to be on edge every time he talks to a police officer from that point forward. Like, and I never got that fear for the longest time until within the last few weeks of like basically when the rioting happened, the protesting happened before it started turning into riots, but the protesting happening and everyone being mad, I started realizing they need to be doing this, because like I don't know how I would feel if I like interacting with a group of people as an individual who represents a group of people that has pulled a gun on me. Like, if I know that this person will just willy-nilly pull a gun, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. And it's not fair to the police officers, and not fair to the people that they've pulled guns on. Like, and they're on edge, and black people are on edge, and they like it. Just every time there's an interaction, it starts to escalate. And like, if you see a white person talk to a police officer, there are things that I'm like, how is my buddy not on the ground handcuffed? Like, my friend cut off a cop because he wanted to get in front of him. He needed to take a turn, so he cut off a cop. So of course we got pulled over.
Yeah, of course.
Like, and the cop talked to him, and my friend's like, you weren't going fast enough. And I'm just like, who says this? like if that interaction, if his skin was not white, I feel like that interaction would have gone a whole different way. Like,
it's possible that it could have.
He didn't even get a ticket.
Jesus, that's surprising.
Yes,
that's shocking. So, man, I don't want to.
But desegregation is not the answer. I just want to.
That's fair. That's fair. I agree. I talked about this on Monday, but I guess in reference to your specific situation, the way I see things are this: if I was a cop, which granted I've never done any of the training, I've fired a few weapons here or there, but I couldn't imagine what that job is like. I go up to every single vehicle. I'm on edge. Period. Regardless, I don't care. Before I even know who's in the car, I'm on edge, because you don't know, and there's so many things that could signal something that could put you on edge that as a civilian I'm not going to know what that is. There's no way. Like, I'm trying to say this without justifying the actions of the cop, because I wasn't there and I can't say whether or not they were justified or not, but I can see things in your story that if I was in his position I would be thinking that. Now, whether or not that's a good or bad thing, that's kind of what the discussion's about, you know? So like, if I'm getting into a car, the back window's out. Why is the back window out? Was there an altercation? Like, is there glass? You don't.
Did the car get stolen?
Like, there's a lot of things that will go through that cop's head. Now, the thing that should have registered in my head is the fact that the driver's already out of the vehicle, and that I'm assuming you were driving, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the driver's out of the vehicle. Probably situations what's the word?
Situations
Dissolved. What's the not escalating? I don't know.
De-escalated.
De-escalated. That's words.
Words are.
But I don't know. Like the whole like fly swatting thing. I don't know. Like, if you were already on edge, would you see something like that and say, "Oh shit"? Or would you see something like that and like go, "Oh, it's just something," you know? Like, again, not justifying what he did, but like, I can see a path, like you ever seen like those the thought paths, like with the branches? I can see is a train of like thinking that can lead him to a position of like, "Oh, I should be on high, like red alert right now." Part of that I do think has to do with your friend's skin color. The problem with that, and I think the twofold problem with that, is like you were saying, where you have black people who they're on edge because of what they've seen, and the police are also on edge because of what they've seen. And those two things basically just keep doing this. and it keeps going up. That is why when I get into those situations, it's probably the same thought process of the police to some extent. Is I want to de-escalate everything. Like it's like if I'm sitting in a car and I think that the guy, like an officer, is getting pretty tense, I'm like, hey man, I can step out. Like I'll offer to do that. Like it's stuff like that. I'm not, and again, should I not have to do that? That's up for debate. But I think in the current situation of things, the only way I can see for things to get naturally better, like progressively better, is both people have to be mindful of the position that they're in and not do stupid stuff. And that goes on both the part of the civilian who's getting pulled over and on part of the officer who's pulling them over. So I don't know. It sounds like I'm justifying what happened, even though I'm not. I'm just explaining a possibility of a thought process, I guess.
So the one argument with that is you and I haven't been trained.
That's true.
And you and I aren't supposed to, like, we are not in
it's a not position, expected of us.
Yeah. Where they should be being trained. Like, and that's a lot of, I've seen on social media, that's something that's been going around a lot, is you have to spend more hours to go to beauty school than you do to be a police officer. And yes, the argument with that is being artistic is actually, you need skills to be artistic. Yeah. However, like, I do think how easy it is to become easy is the wrong word, but how quickly you can become a police officer, it probably needs to change. Like that should probably be one of the things they focus on. I believe giving them 4-year degrees, and not necessarily to make them educated, but to show that they have the patience. And like that's a lot of things. Is a diploma isn't really showing you're smart. It's more showing that you have the willpower to go through something and commit to something. So that way, it's the people who are truly committed to being a police officer are there to be police officers, and the people that, and the other effects, it will be people that will be much more enlightened and realize, and they should take psychology classes and classes like how to de-escalate situations and things like that, where they're currently not, and they can get into situations. They should take medical classes so they know they can't put a knee on a guy's neck and expect them to live.
Yeah. There was a streamer that plays WoW that obviously this subject is like permeated in so many different places, but he was talking about this, and one of the ideas he had I thought was genius, which was, usually when officers graduate, by the time they graduate, they have some idea of where they're going to be stationed or like where their precinct or area is going to be. They should hold graduations, like the government, those counties should hold graduation ceremonies so that the people in those communities have a chance to meet the people, like the new officers that are going to be policing them.
Yeah.
When I heard that, I was like, that's genius. Like that would solve so many problems. Because a lot of the times I think, I don't know if you watch like live PD stuff at all. Have you ever seen there are times where it gets pretty like violent, but there's so much footage of like officers showing up to a scene, de-escalating stuff, and then being done with it. I remember watching one where like a guy shows up to a McDonald's because somebody was like screaming and going nuts. He figures out what the issue is, gets those people separated, and then goes in to make the person's order, brings the food back out to them, and gets them on the way. And I'm just like, that kind of stuff you like to see. Like the officer that went and marched with, what was that in, what county was that in? I think it was in Flint. It was in Michigan. The sheriff that they're like, hey, we're gonna put on our guns and we're gonna like march with you guys. Like that kind of stuff, the community thing, it should be more prevalent. I would like to know the officers that like are going to be in our area. Like that would help. I think the only pushback on something like that would be if they needed to do any sort of undercover stuff, but I feel like that's easily fixed to grab officers outside of the fucking area to do stuff like that if you really have to do something of that nature. So I don't know. I heard that and thought like that should be something that's like put in the forefront because it makes sense.
Yeah. So the police marching with with people protesting together. I 100% believe there are, and that one that you mentioned, the Flint one, I believe those police officers did actually march with people and stuff like that. On the reverse, I've seen several posts and several comments that people will take pictures and photo ops and things like that of marching, and then 5 minutes later were pepper spraying and beating people with batons. Like, they wanted the photo ops, and once they were done with the photo ops, they started beating the crap out of people. And I feel like a week ago, 2 weeks ago, or I don't even know how long it's been so far, George
like 2 weeks, I think,
was killed. I think every cop needs to be watching themselves right now because everyone is so angry. They need to make sure they start trying to de-escalate the situation. And then you see pictures of what's happening in like New York, where the cops drove people over, which is not exactly what happened. They more nudged people with their cars.
Yeah.
But still, the perception, especially the way social media is going to show it, is they ran people over. Like, also nudging someone with their vehicle is still dangerous.
It's not a good time,
It still hurts.
Yeah.
But I watched someone has a clip of a police officer walking by, and this dude's just walking away because they're trying to push the crowds away and get the crowds out. And this police officer walks up and full body checks this guy and sends him to the ground. Like, if I get body checked like that, I'm not getting up. I'm done forever.
It's like, this is where I live now.
Yeah. Where there are other people that can be body checked and get back up. But if I was out protesting and someone just randomly chose, I'm going to show this protester that he shouldn't be out here, and does that to me, now I'm in the hospital. And now my right to protest has been violated. And also, the police officers murdered a guy 2 weeks ago. You shouldn't be pushing people around that's just escalating the situation. And so with every situation you have in Flint, where they were trying to be positive and trying to ease the tensions, you have places like in New York where they're like, fuck it, we don't care.
Yeah.
They're like, all right, let's make this as violent as possible. And I think there's also a lot of other factors that makes these tensions, especially between police officers and black people, harder. And one of them is the justice system is not fair.
I feel like most people,
you and I can go and commit the exact same time, and you will serve probably quadruple the amount of time I will serve, and that's just not fair.
Sure.
Even the same store, we could literally go into the same store, rob the same amount of money, and get two different things, and that is asinine. And you see that constantly. Brock Turner was one of the biggest ones, where he committed a crime where he should have been put away for 20 years, and he was put away for 6 months because he's rich and white. Whereas then a African American man did the exact same crime and was put away for 12 and a half years, which he should be put away for 12 and a half years. But so should the other guy.
So I wonder, I agree that the sentencing thing can be extremely unfair. I think that our judicial system is just flawed in a lot of different ways. But to play devil's advocate, I think sometimes, because I've seen situations where, especially black athletes get away with absurd things, in crazy things, they will go on trial for rape and all kinds of shit, and be like, all right, well, do some community service and good, you're good to go. And I wonder sometimes, and God, this is bad, but I wonder sometimes if it has to do with things outside of the actual crime that cause judges to sentence people for longer or shorter sentences. So say, for instance,
money has a lot to do with it.
That's
I think why they're getting off. And Brock Turner his parents were rich.
Hold on.
There we go. Okay, it's back. I don't know. We lost the footage for a second.
So he was from a rich family, so he got off. The problem is like the excuse for that was, oh, it would destroy his life. Well, what about everyone else? Like he committed a crime that already destroyed somebody's life. Why do we care about this?
Yeah.
Like, what about every other person that's getting 12 and a half years, 20 years, 14 years?
Sorry, let me fix this.
Okay.
It's driving me nuts. I don't know why it's going in and out like that. But yeah. Sorry about that. Okay. Have you ever seen like court proceedings where someone does something very stupid in court and that causes them to get longer sentences, or the judge like sentences them harshly? Man, I'm not saying that is always the case, but I feel like that happens more often than it's televised or publicized. But I agree. The what you can do and what I can do in that setting that will cause, like, you could probably get away with doing more or saying more than I would be able to. I just don't know. Obviously, desegregation is a bad idea, but I'm curious if you have any ideas of like a way to approach this kind of thing. Because I have some, and I don't think people will like them.
I currently don't believe we can fix this in the next 6 months. Or
oh, God, no.
Even depending on how things go, 4.5 years.
I don't think it will be done in 10 years. But
the first thing that has to happen is we have to have someone that, like, when these situations happen, there needs to be somebody out there saying, hey, this is a problem. Let's talk about this logically, and let's try to fix this. Like, sure, that has been said for 25, 30 years, sure, and still hasn't happened yet. And I do think there are tries. I do think our former president did try to put something in place to fix this. It just never got pushed all the way through.
Yeah.
However, like, that means he didn't succeed. He failed at it. And it sucks to say, like, he did try, but he failed.
Yeah.
At least he tried.
Yeah. In comparison to the latter, he did.
So I think one of the reasons why the rioting and the protesting and all that is getting as bad as it is because we don't have somebody trying to unify our country right now. Instead, they're just making comments that are making more people more angry. And, like, especially, like, humans in general don't like being tested. And the fact that our leader is testing people is making them more angry. And it's making them do angrier things. And I think, like, I don't think rioting and destruction of property should be the answer, but I think at the same time that police station being burned down, and the correlation between the police station being burned down and the fact that the cop got arrested 24 to 48 hours later is its own correlation. Like, they show that, oh, look, they burned down a building and stuff started happening. And maybe that was happenstance. Maybe they're still getting evidence and they were still trying to get ready to arrest that cop. But I don't think so. I think they arrested that cop because they burned down the police station. Like, and
I think what's more telling with that whole situation was the autopsy.
Yes.
That I think was like the, like, really? Like, that was the moment where that even the most skeptical person would have to look at that and kind of go, how do you end up with two drastically different results? One that clearly implicates the officer and the one that clearly doesn't. if things, especially when it comes to medicine, like a science kind of thing, it's kind of like, whoa, like what happened there? Like,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think part of a lot of what we're seeing now is in reaction to the outrage. It's not, but I don't know. It's kind of hard to say that without knowing. Like, you can't know that for sure. It could just generally be that timelines added up and that's the way it looks, but that's not necessarily what it is. But definitely does look that way.
And I think the burning of the police station symbolized could also quell a lot of the anger. Like, a lot of people could feel satisfied. Oh, look, and they'd start feeling a little bit better. Like, the same reason why people throw their phones across the room when they're angry on the phone
Yeah.
call, or punch walls, or like just do stuff out of anger to try to make them feel better. I think, like, and I mean this mostly into destroying property.
Yeah, no, other people.
If you're hurting people, you're a horrible human being. You need to stop. But no, like, so I think that is one of the things, and I think that's why there's still more rioting going on, still more peaceful protesting going on. But like, I saw a couple people posting on social media like, hey, the cops have been arrested and they're being charged. What more do you guys want? Why is this still going on? And like, I've wanted to respond back going, if you don't understand what else they want, you're not listening. Like, and that's one of my biggest things is it's not about George Floyd. It's about, like, George Floyd is functionally Robert Paulson. Like, this is entirely Fight Club. George Floyd is Robert Paulson. Like, it's when they're saying George Floyd, they're saying, hey, we don't want to be oppressed anymore. And that's something that I think a lot of people aren't understanding. And there are a lot of people that are like, all right, the cops have been arrested, stop. Why now you guys are just doing this to destroy things? I'm like, no, they're not. They're doing this because they're still mad and they want things to change. Everyone wants things to change, or most people want things to change.
I wonder though, how would you be able to gauge that while people are still doing something like that?
Because every time they're silent, and I think one of the biggest changes is that needs to happen is if we're going to willy-nilly throw terrorist or organizations in the terrorist bracket, every white supremacist group needs to go in the terrorist bracket. Every single one of them.
Are they not?
No, the KKK is not in the terrorist bracket.
Wow, that's absurd.
Antifa was just put in the terrorist bracket.
Yeah.
And they don't have a list of... No one actually is part of that organization. It is an idea, not an organization. That's now a terrorist bracket. But a formed terrorist group that has hurt several people is not actually in the terrorist bracket. And I think that's something someone needs to look at. But a lot of people part of these organizations have money, and that's the problem with our society right now is money runs all. Like, I think with the looting, a lot of the big stores were targeted, like Target was targeted, which is kind of comical. Walmart's, like those stores, small businesses were also targeted. But for the most part, a lot of the big businesses were the ones that were being looted. I think they should have gone a little bit further and gone for the even bigger corporations like Amazon, but looting in Amazon warehouses really difficult.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. So, like, but the idea is to show it's a message showing they no longer want to we no longer want to accept this is happening, and there are ways to changing it. Systematic reform of all police officers being trained in de-escalation is one of the ways. Like, I think every officer needs to be re-reviewed. Like, the police officer that killed that man, he apparently had multiple issues in the past, And I think everyone that has had one issue needs to be reviewed. And maybe one of the things that we can go, and this is a little far out and probably won't go, is every time you have a escalated situation where you hurt a civilian or you shoot a civilian or things like that, you automatically have to be reviewed and you automatically get dock pay. And not like one time, I mean, your salary gets docked 5% or something like that. That way, when you pull out your gun and you shoot somebody, you know you're now making 5% less. And like, I feel like, and not even just shooting someone, when you tase someone, when you hit someone with a baton, when like, and yes, I understand the system could be abused. Like, criminals that get hold of whiff of that will go and like intentionally like shoulder check cops because they know they can, because the cops won't do anything because they don't want to lose money. But if you start hitting the police officers' wallets, then maybe they'll value life a little bit more. But like,
I think the problem for most solutions, not just that, is that goes the same way on both sides. Like making any, like when they start, if you were to implement something like that, criminals would see that and go, haha, okay, cool. Like how far can we push this to be a negative interaction for them, but not for us? But that also works the other way, like implementing curfews and stuff like that. I think that was probably a bad move from a lot of different governments, because what it basically said was, hey, you got your freedom to protest, you do your thing. Also stay home. Like, which to me is kind of like, it's a little weird. Some people will say, oh, well, you can protest at like this time. And I'm like, well, now you have the thing you're protesting against dictating when and like where you can protest, which is not right. Like it seems odd, like, but I don't know. My thing is, I talked about this on the last one, is I think that the cultural melting pot idea of America is so much harder than our founding fathers thought it would be. I think most people think it will be, because the only way to have, because one of the things people say is like, oh, well, we have to find a better way for all of us to live together. Well, the current way that we're trying so far doesn't seem to be great. Now, there's things that we can do to fix that, but I wonder if that, and again, I need to preface this by saying I don't want a desegregation. That is not where I'm going with this line of thought. But what I am saying is I think that some concessions probably need to happen. Like the idea that you can come to a country with everything that you kept from your previous culture, bring it into that country and keep it all, and it will all work together, doesn't seem to work. It just doesn't make, like, logically it doesn't make sense. There's going to be things that clash. Unfortunately, I think for the Black community, the argument of, well, you never asked to come to this country, you were just kind of here, you got brought here. That's one thing. But the other thing is, a lot of what's built into that culture is not so much, it's like anti-police or anti-authority is kind of built into the roots of that because of some of the unfair things that happened back then. Like, there's reason for it, and I get that. But I feel like because that's still there, and it's almost like people aren't willing to part with that. Like, I talked before about like hip hop as a thing. Like there's literally a line like "fuck the police." Like, that is a thing. And again, I understand why that's there. There's a reason for it. But that when a collective group of people rally around something like that or an idea like that, well, guess what? The police are going to see that and say, oh no, well, I need to be on my P's and Q's when I'm dealing with these people. So I like the kill them with kindness, or the peaceful, the more pacifist approach. I get that people are frustrated and they're angry, But I don't think long-term solution is met with an angry riot like violent protests. I sympathize with people of that feeling. Like I do understand that. I empathize with that. But I think long term. Do you remember? Have you ever seen the video of Dave Chappelle going to his town hall? Because he doesn't like. He lived in. I think he lives in like Rhode Island or some shit. Like he lives somewhere like nowhere near Hollywood or anything like that. And I think it's more of that, because as much as these people say fuck the police and they have all these different ideas of authority and whatnot, they don't. I'm saying they, but most of the people that scream fuck all cops are not the people you'll find at a town hall. They're not the people that you'll find that are trying to do things. They're not trying to fix the system with the system. They just are yelling at the system, and there's a reason for that, and there's a place for that, and I don't think it's not justified. I think there's a reason, like it's fair, but I think more good can be done if people were more involved. And that was why I was super hopeful at the end of 2016's election. I thought a lot more people would be, and I think there was a spike in that. I think there's especially a lot of younger people, a lot of people like, can I say my age now? I don't know if I count in that group anymore, but like people of my generation, like that was a wake up call to be like, oh, I need to pay attention to this stuff. I know it was for me. Like it's like, oh, okay, like this kind of matters. But I feel as though that kind of stopped at a certain point. Like no one seems to give a shit about local elections. No one seems to give a shit about like their local, like improving their local communities. Instead, what happens is something like this happens, and then people go, it's bad. We've said it's bad. But it's like, yes, you said it's bad, but there are systems in place that you can use to like try to better it. And I don't know if those systems are being used. Maybe I'm wrong. That may just be my perception. But I don't know.
I think a lot of the smaller communities, there are some that are working on it and trying to fix the situation.
Right.
I think Flint, Michigan, I believe that's where it is trying to do that. However, there are, I think, where a lot of people who are going and vote, they're only voting for up top and the presidency and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I do think the smaller elections matter a lot also.
Way more, in my opinion. They matter so much more.
But because up top isn't going to affect issues like this.
Right.
Except when they can. And I feel like we're in a situation right now where up top could, but he would have to work with everyone else together. And I think unfortunately, a lot of the situations that are going around where, yes, we're talking about the death of a black man and how do we prevent this, and it should be local that fixes it. However, I think a lot of reasons why this stuff continues to happen in all communities is political. And I think it's part of the fact that we have a two-sided system and neither one of the sides actually wants to fix anything. They just want to be better than the other. And
they want to keep their job.
Yeah.
That's
and,
like
and they just want to be better than the other. Like they're literally doing stuff like just because the other side said one thing, they want to do the opposite. And I think that's where we need to start looking and fixing so that our governors and our mayors can actually do their job. Because instead, our governor and mayors are trying to do what the Republicans want or what the Democrats want. And, like, I don't actually know what either one of these sides want anymore. Like,
I think we actually talked about this for a little bit before, like, where it just kind of, like, does this number.
Yeah, like, it's actually funny that, like, how the Republican view in the 1960s, 1950s, 1970s is what the Democratic view is now.
Yeah,
somehow
it just switched at some point.
But like both parties were supposed to be humanistic. We're supposed to be like, let's do what's best for our culture and what's best for everything. And I no longer think they're that way. I think, how can we how can our party benefit? How can we make the most money? How can we stay in control? And like,
I honestly don't see the point of a two-party system.
it,
I don't see a reason for it.
it like basically I think the party I am nowhere near a political science person,
Okay.
so I can't. I'd be just talking out my ass if I tried to
Yeah.
go with it. But from what I'm seeing, I feel like if they just stop caring about what the other side is doing and then doing differently, and maybe everyone working together, that might start the change. And like there are small areas, governors and mayors of cities and local leaders that are trying to put change into effect, but there's thousands of cities in the United States. If only a small percentage of them are doing that,
It doesn't.
it's not going to help. And it's also going to be like, okay, you have Flint, Michigan that has reformed the entire police system and everything's great. Like a couple years, start flowing freely because it took them a few years,
Yeah.
but everything's great. And now two guys from New York just transferred to their department, and these two guys have spent years beating up people of color, of mixed races, and that's their culture. They think that's how things are. And like, sure, they're going to get teamed up with other people, but like they're going to talk like this cop from Flint, Michigan is going to like idolize this police officer from New York, the city of lights,
Yeah.
whatever the New York
It's like,
is.
this guy's great.
And then he's going to start seeing this cop beat up people and be like, oh, and not say anything. And then that's the problem, is like not saying anything is a big problem. Like, you see all these people that are now like driving down the road and they see a African American person get pulled over by a cop, and they're now like pulling over also and making their presence be known to the police officers that, hey, we're watching you. We are watching what's going on. That shouldn't have to happen. And also, in some ways, that shouldn't happen. What if that African American guy is actually a criminal?
Yeah.
And he just starts shooting the police. But when we were talking about decelerating a situation, I did think of something a few years ago. I was looking at, I was doing research into a couple of things, and I was on the Orange County Police Department's page, and they have a page for every police officer of the police force that has passed away. And they have a short like quip of why. I don't remember the numbers, but I was greatly surprised of how small the list of police officers that died was. And then I was like trying to like defend it of, oh, this is just one small police station. I'm sure there's a ton of them, and like I'm wondering what the numbers are for it. But like thinking about it, even if they have 100 or 120 police officers, the fact that they have less than one die a year, that seems small considering how big Orange County is, how many people live in Orlando and stuff like that. And then if you read how these police officers died, most of their deaths are being hit in traffic stops. And the deaths that are from aggressive behavior from somebody is through a vehicle. Like, very few people, like, I don't think a single cop was beaten to death. I don't, like, a couple like one or two cops were shot, but the amount of cops that were killed in face-to-face situations is almost non-existent in over 30, 40, 50 years from the Orange County Police Department. Obviously, those numbers are going to change from different police departments. But like looking at those numbers, I thought that was really weird, and I'd like to see someone try to collate that data, someone try to get that data and figure it out. Because if the Orange County Police Station isn't abnormal, if that is the normal, then no, there's no reason why a cop should be that aggressive towards anyone, because they're not ever dying in arm-to-arm combat or like in interactions and stuff like that. Sure, they're dying by people starting their vehicles and running them over, So that might be one thing. But these people are already out of cars. They're walking the street and they're being beaten to death. And so I would be interested in that, what that report looks like.
I guess the devil's advocate there is part of the reason that number could be so low is because of how aggressive they are, like because of how controlling and police officers are currently trained to be. They don't see many deaths that way because they sometimes, by more force than necessary, make sure that is not a thing. Now, what would be unfortunate is if laws or things changed where you're restricting the options that a police officer has, and then by doing that, more of them are killed in those infractions or interactions, which I don't think anybody wants to. And I know some people would make the argument of they knew what they signed up for. That risk is there, when they decide to become an officer. But I think that whether or not you care about that or not, I don't think you want to see someone be killed, regardless of their job. I don't think that matters. I'm not going to say that because people are going to take that out of context, but yeah, I don't think I think that the training is a big thing. I think that you have to, maybe the 4 years might make sense, because I wanted to talk to Mark more, because I don't remember exactly how long his thing was, because he went from granted, I guess he had some experience in first responder training and whatnot, but I think it took him a year and a half or 2 years or something like that, close to that, which I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things that probably should eliminate the option of being a police officer from people. Have you had any violent a specific type of violent history? No, you can't become an officer. Have you made some kind of crime, or you have any record of making really poor judgment under a stressful situation? Sorry, bud, you can't do it. And that may be strict, and it may limit the amount of officers that come up. But I think ultimately it will make the quality of officers that we have better. So.
Yeah. One of the things that is interesting is I don't think Orlando is really a crime-filled city.
No.
Although I think we were leading on the number of homicides.
Really?
And yeah, I believe so, or at least in the top 10.
Interesting.
Chicago might have been the winner. I don't remember, but I remember Orlando definitely up there with homicides.
It wasn't on the bottom.
Yeah. But what about these cities like Chicago or New York that have supposedly higher crime rates? I don't know if New York does anymore, but I know in the 90s when I was growing up, it had a bigger crime rate. And then some of these things I think about, and I think about these stories and the over glamorification of stories about organized crime and criminals, and most of them are white. So why are white people the one most mob members
okay,
over the Hollywood crime? A lot of the Hollywood crime, the mafia, crime in Chicago, crime in Boston, the crime that the Irishman ran by the Irish and ran by different cultures, most gangster movies and stuff like that is, and gangster being Al Pacino
sure.
movies. And maybe that was just the type of movies I watched.
I was gonna say I might disagree with you, because I in a lot of the stuff that I consume, it's usually it's like mostly Hispanic. A lot of companies now are, even before this whole George Floyd situation, a lot of companies I could tell were squeamish about writing black people in a crime like thing and having that be a glorified thing. Like, and a lot of my media is from like TV and video games. So like, for instance, I can think of like the Ghost Recon, the last couple of Ghost Recon games that have come out. Every single last one of those has been a Hispanic drug lord, like ringleader. Like it's always been that case, and there's not a single black person that's in there. In that aspect, you can play as a black officer in the special ops group, but there's not one black bad person in the game. There's that game. There's Far Cry. Far Cry. The last couple of Far Cry games, it's been Hispanic guy, white guy. And then the most recent one was like, oh no, I don't want to get this wrong because it's neither of those, and it's not Hispanic, but it's like it's some other race, I forget. And then the DLC characters were these vigilante like black like gay couple or sisters or something of that nature, and like, but you were playing as them. Like I feel like a lot of companies realize that is just bad optics, so they just don't do it. Like another thing that comes to mind, I used to watch the show called Lucifer. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen ads for it. I've never.
It's so fucking good. It's so good. I understand that it is very like I don't know, like the stereotypical like stay-at-home mom like crime drama like thought process, because it's a very like it's a procedural like thing where like crime happens and like there's a detective, but like the story is just really good. But like even in that, they had like they had two memorable black bad guys, and the second one was an entire episode devoted to like black crime, like towards like it being bad because one of the characters was black, and like it was kind of him being like, well, watch Lucifer. I don't know. There's an episode where like basically Lucifer's there. Amenadel, I think is the guy's name. He's one of the other angels, whatever. He's represented as a black guy. They like possess people's bodies, whatever. He's there, and he realizes that like he just experiences like racism in LA, and like the whole episode is devoted to that. But that's way off the point from what I was trying to say. But yeah, like I feel like it's the opposite now. Like there was a point where that was the case. I can remember seeing that. Like even comedy like movies, like I guess now even just regular dramas, there are films that are clearly made for just black audiences. I don't really care for those films. Like they've never really been stuff that I'm like, oh cool, I relate. Like I've never really been. But that stuff still exists. I don't know, Soul Plane, like that comes to mind of like the movies like that are clearly directed towards a singular audience, which there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. But I feel like the idea of like the Bloods and Crips kind of thing, like that stuff, you don't see that anymore, or at least I don't see that anymore. I don't know.
And I think like where that happened, or like there were some Hollywood shows about that.
There were documentaries and stuff like that too.
Most Hollywood movies, especially growing up, I watched was your gangster movies, your Al Pacino, Scarface, that type of movies. So and like those movies like showed more white people doing awful things to cops. So like there's another thing where like I can't think of a movie where there is a black character singling out police officers and doing awful things to them, but I could name at least 3 movies where there are white characters doing horrible things to police officers. So it's weird to me that like that there is that type of social dogma, but I do think some of the issues that it is happening, especially with police brutality towards Black people, is, and I don't think it's getting worse. I think it's been the same for years, and just social media is pointing it out more. I think police brutality towards Black people has been going on from the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it wasn't being thrown in our faces until now. And we've, like, I think more people like me are now coming to the realization that that is happening, and we're now angry about it. And I think that's also why you have the looting, the rioting, the peaceful protests that are turning into rioting. I like, and we've been like 2008 to 2016. We were trying to. There was several instances that happened to try to fix it, and we didn't fix it. And it's weird because it's more a human issue, like other cultural issues that need to be fixed, like shootings in schools and stuff like that. That is a whole different issue that can be resolved to a physical item or a physical thought process, whereas police brutality is literally human instinct. It's changing human behavior, where school shootings can be fixed by several different thought processes, and changing human behavior is hard, and we haven't been trying to do that. And I think
those two things are very similar.
School shootings, and
I think so, because I think they both revolve around a thought process. One is involving a singular person, the other is involving multiple people. I think that's the big difference there, where you have like the interaction between police and the Black community, whereas you have a school shooting, you have the interaction between a young person who's developing, and their interaction with other, like, the world around them, essentially. They're both would be very hard to fix, but I think they both are a thought process problem, not a. I wouldn't declare them as so different, I would say.
Do you think the culture changing is also why it's more, people are more angry about it? Like in the 90s, when I grew up in the 90s, the shit that was said on TV would never fly now. Like, and it's like racial comments, feminist sexual comments towards women, comments about being gay, being bisexual, anything like that. Like the it is like, I've watched some old TV shows that I was like, oh, I remember watching this whenever I was like 10. I love this show. And I'm watching it, I'm like, they've just insulted every nationality and sexual orientation in 9 minutes of the show. What is going on?
I forget who said this. I think it might have been a Will Smith quote from a recent interview he did. I don't remember verbatim, but it was basically, if you think back on all those TV shows that talked about racial stuffs, like different, like, gender, whatever, and like they said race is shit, sex is shit, but at the end of those shows, those people were laughing. Like, those shows were usually like, they would sprinkle a little drama in here and there, and they had episodes that were super heavy on, like, hey, this shit is fucked up. The Jeffersons comes to mind for me, and like God, what, the Sanford and Sons, like those shows. Like, when I think about like a show that talked about race, but they were funny. Now, because it's really hard for a show or some form of media to do that, because instantly they get canceled, regardless of whether or not the intent of it is for it to be something that people can universally get around and say, yes, this is fucked up, but we're bonding on it on some level because it's funny and we're both laughing. So I would say it does play a part. I think that it, it's the reason why it really frustrates me when I was trying to build a bigger group to talk about this stuff. Anyone that I knew that had a conservative point on it, they would come to me, talk to me about it, but they didn't want to be on the show. And that honestly pissed me off because like I understood why they didn't want to be on the show, and it's fucked up. Because just because somebody has a different opinion of you or a different opinion on a subject, it feels as though it's one side that's like shutting people down, and it's the people that have conservative views. It's weird, and I don't consider myself a conservative person or anything like that, but there is something about like where people are posting like, if you think this way, unfriend me. If you think this way, I'm blocking, like all this. It's like you are not helping your case at all. The whole point of you posting all this stuff online or saying what you feel is to convince someone otherwise. And if you're just shutting them off from conversation altogether, you don't have anyone to convince. You're just talking to a wall. Like that, it pisses me off because like what you were saying before about like media and whatnot. Now, I think it's turned things in a way where no one wants to have a conversation, and instead people just want to say a thing, get the affirmation that what they said was correct, and then they're good. Like I see so much stuff like now, like all the BLM stuff that goes online, and I just kind of feel like it's a little patronizing is the word I'm looking for. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. It's just I don't necessarily, it doesn't feel genuine. It feels fake. Mostly because it's just words, and then those same people don't really do anything. And by do anything, I don't mean like go out and break a window. I mean like the stuff that I find nice is when sometimes like when I used to leave and I go to my car, I have a lot of white neighbors, I guess, around here. They're white and Russian, and there's like one black family, and then there's one Hispanic family, and I think the other person's white. But what I noticed, and the stuff that makes me go, this is a good response, is none of us really talked much to each other. Actually, I have a lot of funny stories about like how weirdly the social dynamic between the people around us are. But recently, like I'm on my way to my car, all the white people are like, "Hey, how's it going?" Very friendly. Where I've never spoken to them before. Like everyone's just super like open and kind of like a lot more friendly than they were, and I think that is good. I think that's a good sign.
Do you think it will continue in 3 weeks, in a month?
Probably not. Probably not. After people get settled into their own lives, like people don't, and it goes both ways too, though. Like there's something to be said about black people and police officers. I think feeling afraid is probably not a good reaction. Like, and I remember back in the day, granted, again, there's the caveat that my mom worked in law enforcement, but I remember even like some of my friends that didn't work in law enforcement, you see an officer, you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" Like they were just like friendly conversations. It's not always like every time I deal with this person, it's always going to be a negative outcome. And part of that falls on you. Like you can make those situations more positive if you're not like, if every time you talk to a police officer is because you're doing something that you're not supposed to, then your overall perception of them is going to be negative. Whereas if you didn't do that, if you were more open to like getting to know them outside of the altercations that you'll have with them, you probably will have a different mental picture of police officers or police in general. Like I think that attributes to why I have such a different picture, is because the way I grew up, and I would see them and I'd be like, "Hey, what's going on? Oh, that's cool." Like I remember sitting around waiting for my mom to be like get out of work and hanging around the police department, like seeing like their gun cabinets and stuff like that, and like being around those things at such a young age. I don't know. I think it sucks that it feels like one side is just being told to shut up. Like, and it's like you're never gonna fix things that way. Never once in history has it ever worked. Like,
the issue is one side is saying, "Hey, people should live," and the other side is like, I mean, they should live, but like, what about all these other things? And you're like, your argument to these guys should live is what about all these other things? That's not an argument. I think that's
yeah.
like a lot of people are making comments along the lines of like that's like telling a firefighter to spray down every house when only one's on fire type things. When someone responds with all lives matter to Black Lives Matter.
I don't think that's true. I think the better comparison would be the house is on fire, but one house, the yard is on fire. Like one is in full engulfed in flames, and then the other, there is a problem. And I think that's the reason why people get so upset when people are complaining about all lives matter versus Black Lives Matters. Is it's not that they're saying, well, let me phrase it. Some people are genuinely saying like Black lives don't matter. Like there are people like that exists. That those people exist. But I maybe I might be too optimistic, but I would like to believe that a decent portion of those people are just saying we agree that Black lives matter, but also all lives matter. And I'm gonna this is just me, I guess. I'm gonna support your efforts in terms of creating a better place for the Black community. I hope you'll do the same when it comes to something else, because it sure doesn't seem like you will. It seems like you're just invested in the thing that really is towards you, and then once you're done with that, you're out. Because whenever anything else happens or anyone else, you laugh. There's jokes of, oh, that crazy white kid, he went to school with a gun. Whereas it could have been like, okay, well, why did he do that? But you don't care about that. Instead, you only care about like the thing that is you're invested into that. And I get that's super easy, and I'm not trying to say that as like you should care about or you shouldn't care about your own things that are more pressing to you. Like I get that, but it's hard for people to put themselves in other people's shoes. And I think it can be easier if people were more understanding from both ends, not just from the person who's saying all lives matter, but from the person who's saying Black lives matter too. You gotta, if somebody's so far away from your way of thinking, you gotta kind of try to get to their thought process in order to bring them back to you. If that's your goal. If your goal is just to say a thing and put it out there, then by all means you can do that. But if you want to pull somebody over to your cause, the worst possible way of doing that is by immediately disregarding whatever they're trying to say. That's the thing that I guess I'm seeing a lot more now is I don't know, when someone says all lives matter to me, I don't see that as saying Black lives don't matter right off the bat. I think I see that as someone saying that there are a lot of problems, yours included. Like, I don't know.
And so I do. That is definitely what their intent is. I just feel like I feel like Black Lives Matter. This sentence, like all lives matter, is rebuttaling against Black Lives Matter. The actual sentence of Black Lives Matter, but the sentence Black Lives Matter is an idea, and so I think the reason why there's so much argument to the all lives matter response when someone says Black Lives Matter and then someone rebuttals with all lives matter is because Black Lives Matter is an ideal that we should all live equally. We should where we live in the land of a free, but there are a higher majority of people with black skin that don't feel free, and should be free. And so when you're saying, when someone says all lives matter in response to that, it's basically most of the people that are saying that have my skin color, and there are less often times where I don't feel free than I do feel free, where I know there are a lot more people that are black that don't feel free at all ever. Like they're like, sure, they are free, they can go to work and things like that, but they're not sure if going to the grocery store and picking up a thing of milk they're going to get scrutinized. And like I think I actually think we need to call out racism more. We need to call out like when I went to the mall with my two daughters, and their friend was with them who who is black, and they were, I think my eldest was 5 at the time. She was holding hands with him, and he was 4.5 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
And we were walking through the mall, and there were several people looking in full disgust that my child is holding hands with someone of different colored skin. And I think I should have said something. I didn't. I just looked at them like, "What's your problem?
Fuck is it?" Yeah.
Like this is the cutest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like I want to videotape this. This is adorable.
Yeah. I've experienced that a lot. I've only dated one black person in my entire life, so I've experienced that a lot. But I don't know. I think I'm just wired differently. I think because I've had those situations where people are staring or whatever, and I see it, and I kind of just go, they'll be dead soon. It's like that's the mind. I'm just that dumb thought process is just they'll be but it doesn't seem to be the case. So maybe that's the wrong way of thinking.
And but one of the other issues is where it might just be a sideline glare to you.
Yeah.
But later on, it might be them hooting and hollering at someone else, and those people walking by, or the fact that a black man is going to be scrutinized for holding hands with a white woman, that shouldn't be the case like that, or the fact that we've made that it's culturally known that people will look angrily at that. And that we just don't call them out on, hey, you're actually an asshole for thinking this way, I think is the problem. And I'm hoping that with everything that's going on in the last few weeks, that's what's going to start changing. Is anytime I see that now, I'm hoping I'll sack up and actually be like, yo, change your attitude or look the other way, or GTFO, because this isn't acceptable anymore. And it should never have been acceptable. I remember as a kid, one of the first not silly jokes I heard was a racist joke. And I laughed at it. And then that's that we need to make those jokes as bad as as other things.
Are you talking about jokes among friends, or the reason I ask is because I get a little touchy when it comes to comedy. I feel like comedy should be a place that's no holes barred. I also think it's what's the word? It's a little we're not giving people enough credit to know when, or to feel when the intent of something is hateful. If I'm at a comedy show and I'm listening to somebody and they're saying, there's one, I went to the Improv not that long ago, and I watched Earthquake. He's a famous comedian who happens to be black, and most of the people there were black. And he said a lot of fucking racist shit, but it's in the context of comedy. And so the intent there is not to be hateful. The intent there is to be funny. So I don't think it's fair to attribute racism to somebody who's trying to make a joke. That being said, there are people who try to use that as a guise to say hateful shit. And I think that most people, young adults to adults get that. I feel like you and me both, if somebody said some wild racist shit and was ha, joke, fun, if we'd be able to tell whether or not their intention was to get by with saying something racist, or if they were trying to be funny. Do you think that's fair? I don't know. Like maybe
in some ways, but like I think the fact that there is so much racism in the world and you're constantly reminded about it, the put racism and jokes needs to start quelling off, because we're already seeing like it's the same thought process of like I stopped watching a few TV shows that were political fantasies because like the crap that was happening there was happening in real life. So I'm like, I don't want my fantasy to be
House of Cards.
It's that type of thing where if you're living with racist pressure constantly to go and then like you want to laugh, but you're not laughing at racism, and
that may be a privilege that I enjoy. The fact that I don't deal with a lot of racist stuff from day to day, so that may be a reason why when somebody says something like that, it's so funny to me. Like, and I don't know, maybe I don't know.
Like, I think like some of the other jokes is like I would tell a story at one point that and I'd laugh at this story, and within the last few weeks, I'm starting to think the story isn't funny. I was at Walmart at one point, and we were walking by the gun rack, and the alarm went off near the gun rack.
Okay.
It was me and two black people around the gun rack.
Yeah.
Both black people immediately just lifted their arms up in there, and they're like, and they stopped moving, and they just stood there with their arms up in there, they're nowhere near the gun rack. I am the closest person to the gun rack. And they just didn't move for like 40 seconds until an associate walked up and turned off the alarm, walked away, and then they started walking again. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny. But like thinking of it is they immediately were like, well, we can't do anything because we might get in trouble. So I guess we're just going to stay fit. And the fact that that's their thought process, to me at the time, it was hysterical.
Yeah.
And now I think about it, maybe it's not the fact that they felt like they had to do that. And I went.
That is sad.
During a gathering at one point, after we were done with a tournament or something, we went to dinner, and there was like, I don't know, 8 of us, and the 2 people who got there first were African American, and we walk in the restaurant, and the restaurant's completely empty, and we can't see our friends. And we're like, hey, our friends are here. Do you know where they are? And they walk us to the entire back corner of the restaurant where they were sitting.
What the hell?
And we sit down like, this is weird. There's like, all right, whatever. There's, like, there was, I think, one other like group in the restaurant, and we were like sitting around, and one of my friend was like, sorry, we got here first, and they always sent the black people in back. And I'm like, what? And like, he says that as a joke, but at the same time, it had happened, and it has happened enough to him that he knew that's why he was being sick.
So I've never experienced anything like that. That sounds like a truly, like a true joke. Maybe I kind of want to know who it is. Do I know this person?
He is a magic player.
Okay. Damn it. I want to know who made it.
He worked at the Game Academy for a while. Do you know the people from him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it a black guy?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I know who it is. I feel like that might have just been a joke.
Okay.
Granted, is it possible? Sure. Like it is possible for that to be a thing somewhere, but I feel like it's such an outlandish thing that I want to believe that that's a joke, because that seems so crazy. But I don't know.
I mean, to be fair, it is the only thing that made sense.
Yeah.
It was a Fridays, by the way. We walked to the Fridays had one other group of people in it, and we were walked to the very back of the restaurant.
Okay, so how much did they not choose those seats at all?
Your
Your group of friends that got there first.
No, they were. That's where they were set. They said
all
there was
that's
6 or
weird.
8 of us.
That is a little weird. Because most of the times, like, you get to an empty restaurant, like, and like, yeah, you can sit wherever the fuck you want. Like, even if they're like, I'm like, okay, can I have that? And they, like,
That's why everyone liked Denny's. You
yeah,
walk in and like
yeah,
whatever
the
you guys
fuck you want to say.
everyone's Sweet. I need to know Denny's and like since I had children.
I think I went there with some of our mutual Magic friends.
Yeah.
Not that long ago,
But so like there are jokes like that. And where he might have been joking, there might have also been a sense of
sure,
that actually could be. And like I feel like we need to, as a society, start breaking it down to where people realize that that is not what's happening, and we need to make sure it's not happening. And when it is happening, we call those people out. I think we're starting on the right track with that lady that called or threatened the black man that she was going to call the cops on him and say that he's threatening them. And then because of that video going viral, she lost her job and they took her dog away. And
what?
She had just adopted a dog, and the dog adoption agency took her dog away.
Wow. Okay.
This comedian, I think his name's Trevor Noah. He made a couple comments on it. He was talking about everything that's going on right now, and it was a very serious conversation. And he's like, he had the same thought process of he's glad that stuff is happening. He's like, she truly got punished taking a white lady's dog. Like, but he said it with the same tone as he said everything, all the serious things. So I was very happy that he was able to throw in that little quip.
He took over after Jon Stewart.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. I
haven't kept up with that show, because in his early taking over the Daily Show, I believe is what it's called. He said some shit that I don't even remember what it was, but he had something that, like, and this is me being a hypocrite from what I said before, but
interesting.
he said some stuff and I was just like, I'm probably gonna tune out of that. But John Oliver was the other comedian that like had a show like that. I was like, I like this guy. I like the way he delivers his stuff. I mean, I agree with some of the stuff that he says, but like, it's a overall good show. And I think it's also pretty informative too. But yeah, I don't want to mention this because I feel like I'm building a narrative for myself that's not true. Of like, I'm playing devil's advocate for some of this, and this is one of those things. One of the things I guess you could say with a thought process like that is you got to make sure that what's actually being done is racist. So like what I'm getting at is like, okay, so you call somebody out for that. They lose their dog. They lose their job. And it comes to find out they were following like policy, or they were just doing something. The intent behind it was not a racist intent. It was something else. But the damage has been done. They've lost everything already. So I agree. I think that people should be more vocal about this stuff. But I think people need to understand they need to understand the responsibility that they hold in that. If you're going to, it's the same thing like rape allegations. Like, yes, it is a horrendous and terrible and serious crime, but you need to understand the seriousness that comes behind something like that. Because before a trial, before any evidence whatsoever, you can ruin somebody's entire life with that. So it's a big hammer that people need to use responsibly. I fear that people have not shown that they know how to do that. But with anything, like any time something like that is given, like especially with the internet, man, like anytime something like that happens, and I know some people will say, oh well, some people will get accused of that stuff and there's just going to be collateral damage. I don't like that idea. I would prefer that every time we take somebody down, it is a legitimate person that needs to be taken down. But But I don't know if that's possible. That might not be possible, and the only way to move forward might be for there to be collateral damage. The problem is I don't want to be the collateral damage, and most people don't want to. So,
and what you say is very true, and it could get to a point where it does cause issues like that,
yeah,
and then it starts not mattering as much. I think rape allegations have gotten to the point where, like, currently both the presidential nominees running for 2020 have both been accused of rape. Because we are all really good at this.
Yeah, it's great.
People.
It's a quality system that works
Yes.
every time.
And sorry, it hurts.
No, it's sad.
So, like, the fact that could also turn into racial, that could be the nightmare racial
Yeah.
allegations, is they turn in that way and then they just turn into not mattering anymore because of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, our current president has been accused multiple times of being racist and nobody cares. And there's several politicians that constantly are called racist or referred to racist, and they maintain their seating, and they do blatantly racist things, and they maintain their seating.
I don't ever think anyone should be. No one should lose anything for an allegation, in my opinion, regardless of whatever the allegation is. I think people should be losing things once we find out that allegation is true, and it should be quick and efficient. Like, okay, all right, so you said or people claimed that you were racist, and then we opened up your log from Twitter, and we were like, oh shit, all right, man, you're out. Like, it should be that clean and easy. But what I guess the devil's advocate thing again is, if there is no check on Twitter, there is no like research done. It's just somebody says that guy's racist, and everybody says and then that guy leaves. Like, that guy gets fired. Like that's what I'm afraid of. Yeah.
But at the same time, so for governments, that's bad. But if you look at TV shows, our media, our actors and actresses are put on higher standards than any of our politicians.
Yeah,
like,
because I think more people know them.
Like, I'm
not justifying that, by the way. I'm just saying, yeah. I think that's the reason why they lose so quick. Like, things happen so fast for them because they're more known. Yeah. Like, I doubt a lot of people even know who our representatives is. Like yeah. people may not know that. Like,
I only know their name because I emailed them about change over the weekend. So
yeah,
Anna, I don't even remember.
I'm not sure either. So that's that proof. Like,
wrote the name down, sent the email, and then I still haven't got a response back. It's been
of course not
6 days.
Yeah.
2 senators, 2 House representatives, nothing.
I have a buddy of mine who I believe is running for office up in Boston or New Hampshire. He was motivated to do it because of some of this stuff. However, that means that I have to go back and check our old YouTube channel and clean what I need to clean, because we joked around back then, and I gotta make sure that he's good to go, you know. But yeah, I don't know.
Because those old YouTube channels, they're gonna.
I don't think we said anything wild, like,
yeah, but they're gonna like.
But people, yeah, people are gonna pick through that stuff, man. Like,
ORC, OC.
AOC? Yeah.
Like, she apparently did some video in a high school where she was dancing to a bunch of music. Like, not even provocative.
Yeah.
Just
dancing, yeah.
And, look, she's wild.
It's like, oh, I see you guys have never danced before in your entire life. Got it.
Yes,
like,
yes.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so yes, you do have to make sure that stuff, because of silly things like that. But
how do you do that though? Like, how do how do you create a system where people can get the bad guy without missing that shot? I don't know, like, especially when it comes to a court of public opinion, and that usually is where people end up losing a lot. Like, no, there was no trial or anything for the no. I'm not familiar with the story that you were talking about before with the lady and the dog and whatnot. But there's no trial for that. It's just like someone says something. I'm sure. I'd like to believe that there's some research that was done and people were like, "Oh no, she's fucking like, get her out of here." But you can't assure that for every single case. Yeah. Or I say you can't, but maybe you can.
The video was her literally. Like the black man took out his phone and was videotaping her, and she's like, "Why are you in something along the lines of why are you in this park?" And I'm going.
Was it the one where the guy was sitting down and she was trying to like he lived in the place where they were, and she showed her like his key or whatever, and then they ended up taking his key or some shit like that.
I
maybe not. Okay. I remember hearing something about that. Yeah.
But in the video, she literally says, "I can call the cops and tell them a black man is threatening me," and is what she said. And so she used his race as a weapon against him.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
It's like that's like the epitome of racism.
Yeah.
And the fact that, like, in some ways, I'm advocating for us to hate white supremacists. I feel like in some ways that is also racist, but at the same time,
no, I don't
hate is,
yeah, I don't think it's racist to hate somebody who hates people.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. I would like to believe that most people would think that's fine. Like, that's
like the issue is we're not, I feel like we're not being vocal enough towards them. Like whatever that rally that happened a few years ago, and people started taking pictures of these guys and finding finding out their names, and those guys started losing their jobs because of it, and then a few of them were complaining about it. Like, I think that was a great start. I don't think we did nearly enough. There's thousands of people in that rally. I think we should have a name and number of every single person there, and they all should have lost their jobs. Like you can't advocate hatred towards, like, saying you're better towards another group of people and expect to be in this country to continue to be a model citizen, because you're not. Like, you shouldn't be in a job. Like, I don't want the people at my banks, like, to have that mindset. I don't want the people that flip my burgers to have that mindset. I don't want to have anything to ever deal with those people ever. Like, and like, it's America is designed, as you called it, a melting pot,
right,
of all different races, and that's one of the best parts about it. Like, all of my favorite, like, stories in playing the card games I've played has been involved in going to these other cities and playing against people that I've never played against, and playing against people from all over the world. Like, I've played against people from Australia, from Brazil, from Europe, all the countries.
Yeah.
Like, so I've played, like, and I love these stories. I love, like, after I had played against someone from Australia, we talked about Australia, because I'm like, I've never been to that country.
Yeah.
How, like, and I asked him probably silly questions.
Yeah, of course.
Like, he's probably thinking, like, silly American. But, like, he answered them nicely and peacefully. And I'm like, he did beat me in the tournament, so he's probably happy that, like, just is like, oh, he's not angry. He's actually like, yeah, sure, I'll talk to him. But I think, I don't know, I wish I could disagree what's going on with the protests and the rioting and the looting, but I then think to myself, a football player tried to get ahead of this years ago, and he no longer plays football anymore because of it. Like, that, like, he tried to get ahead of this. He tried to make a reform, and he tried to do it peacefully, and he tried to do it as a big message. And he did it as a giant message and lost his job because of it. And, like, yes, I understand people saying it's disrespectful, but
I don't.
you
That's not an argument in my opinion.
like
From someone who's spent a lot of time. I've never been officially in the military, but I spent a lot of time with military people. That's a stupid argument in my opinion. But
if it was about us taking a knee because we don't like the way, like, I don't know, like silly causes, like we want roads to be better kept.
yeah,
Like if you're taking a knee because the roads aren't being kept, not okay. Yes, I think that is disrespectful to the national anthem, because I think you're taking a knee. You are being you are doing the opposite and being disrespectful to a song that is about our freedom. And roads, clean roads or working roads isn't really freedom. However, being able to live and not having to have fear anytime you talk to a police officer is freedom. And that is what he was protesting. He was taking a knee because this song is about freedom and African Americans aren't free. And he was trying to make a point about that. And people were saying, oh, that's disrespectful. And I'm like, you're not listening. And that's my issue is I think all of this, everything that is going on, anyone who's arguing over anything is because they're not listening. And like that is something I've been trying to get with people. And like I think a lot of the reasons why people aren't trying to view what Colin Kaepernick did as a great way to make a statement, or and they argue with it being disrespectful. And I think people who don't think there's a problem with police officers and there's just a few bad seeds and there doesn't need to be a change, and because there's a lot of people who still think that. And I think all of these people who have these thoughts are thinking this because they're not listening. And I don't think they're consciously not listening. I think they're subconsciously not listening because, like, it's a horrible word to use because it's good. Like trying to convince someone of it, they're going to shut off because they're cowards. They are afraid that their life is going to be upended if they realize that they are living besides people who are being treated as second-class citizens, even though they think they are not second-class citizens. They think they are equal. However, they're not. There's people being murdered in the streets, and they're anytime they go to court, they're getting 4 times more problems. There's a ton of people in jail that shouldn't be in jail, like, and most of them are black. And the fact that no one is and then people argue with, well, they shouldn't commit a crime if they don't want to be in jail. I was like, some of those people don't have a choice to commit a crime because they've been put in a position of poverty, and we're not economically, we're not also trying to fix things to where that doesn't happen. And like the people who are arguing against all of this is because they're afraid to think that way. And in some ways, and the reason why I know they're afraid and the reason why I know they're cowards is because in some ways in the last 6 months, I feel like I've just realized this. And I haven't thought this way because I was afraid, because I was a coward. And the word coward is a hurtful word and a scary word, but it is the word that describes it. If a white person is walking around thinking a black person is 100% free in the United States, they are wrong. They are a coward. They are not thinking properly. Like as a society, like there might be individuals that are free. There might be black individuals that are free.
Sure.
But as a society, black people aren't free. And this is the land of the free. So we need to change things. And it starts with, yes, our local governments have the power to change the police force, but it also starts with our leaders not making comments that could be alluded to racial tension and or propagating white supremacy movements and stuff like that. Like you can't just say not all white supremacists are great or bad. Like you can't say that they are all bad, even if they're not. They are all bad. like one of our coworkers has a mindset of everything should be burned to the ground, and in some ways, like I can't argue with them. And it sucks. Like I want to, like in every way I want to, but it the thought process is we need to change everything. We need to change how we interact. We need to change the police officers, and not just with how police officers interact with Black people, how police officers interact with Hispanic people, how police officers interact with Muslims, how police officers interact with anyone that is not a white person. And in some ways, how they interact with white people.
I was gonna say, like, everyone,
but the moment they walk up and they are in an interaction with someone that is Black or Hispanic or Muslim, there is a larger percentage of that going badly. And I would like to hope that the racial tensions towards Muslims have changed, because the 9/11 has happened so long ago, but they haven't.
So that reminds me of something that I really dived into on Monday, and I'm curious as to what your take is. So I am of the current opinion. It's a soft opinion. It's not something I'm like, it's no hill I'm dying on or anything like that. But it's a theory, I guess I should say. I have this theory that the idea of a cultural melting pot is impossible without concessions from each of those cultures. And I don't know if people want that. And what I mean by that is the concessions have to come from white people and Muslim people and Hispanic people and Black people. Like, you cannot expect for people that are that different to live amongst each other without there being any altercations.
Why?
Because their cultures are going to be so different that I doubt, and again, this is just a theory, I don't know if they will be able to meld. And I'm not saying that to mean that they should separate. What I'm saying is it should be okay for a Hispanic person to, I don't know, adopt a different culture. It should be okay for a white person to adopt a different culture. I think.
Can't they?
So, because when, say, for instance, if you saw, or not you, but if someone saw some blue-eyed blonde girl in a hijab, people would think about that. They would get that person would get looks that would be odd, because that's not your culture. And likewise, that's the same reason why, and a part of this is just uneducation. Like, people don't know that that is a thing, or people don't know that they don't know what these cultures are. Like, they're just not educated on them. So when they see it, it's a unknown thing, and thus the perception of it, there's fear and stuff you don't know about. But I feel as though the thing, I guess I'll just get to the point with the Black people. Something I proposed was, I guess I did talk about it earlier. The part of the culture of Black people has something. In part, there's a fuck authority kind of thought process, and that somebody actually on Monday referenced the fact that country music and I use the realm of music like rap and hip hop and stuff like that. That's where and people were saying, well, country music has a lot of fuck government shit in it too, and I'm like, yeah, that's true. But I feel like it's more directed, and there's also the clothing you wear, the company you keep, how you present yourself. That kind of stuff matters. And I wonder, this is just a theory, and it's not possible, but I wonder what would happen if you deleted all of that stuff. You took out all the fucking all of the criminal centric parts of Black culture and whitewashed it. replaced it. Whereas like you would see like a black guy named Bryce or you get what I'm saying? Like you would see like that kind of thing. I wonder what would happen. I wonder if it would be the same where people would just see someone of a different color, but not relate that to something that is negative to them, regardless of whether it's actually a negative thing or not. But they would see that and go, oh, I should be on alarm, or I should be I'm alert, or I should be fearful of this person. I wonder if that would change things.
I don't think it would.
You don't think it would?
No. In the when they were trying to desegregate everything, there you see all these old pictures of African Americans walking into the college, like into a white college with the like desegregating the school for the first time, and they're wearing
the uniforms.
Yeah. They're wearing white people clothing, basically.
Right.
And they still got beaten. They still got their stuff trashed. They still got threatened. And that happened all through the 60s and 70s and the 80s. And I mean, it's probably happening now. Like, I don't think changing their clothes, changing their music, like, would help. Like, I think, like, sure, in some situations, if it's 11:30 at night and I'm walking down the street and you're walking up to me with what you're wearing, I will probably not think twice. However, if you're walking up to me and your pants are double their size and sagging a little, and your shirt's double the size, and like you have 17 chains around your neck and a beanie, there might be a little fear there based on that.
And I think that goes for either race. I don't think it matters what race you are.
And
like,
that's true.
You see that,
white person.
Yeah, fucking. You see that, you're like, all right, shit, dude.
If you're telling me that, like, if everyone just started wearing all the same things, that might fix it, yes. So but, like, there's movies about this, like Equilibrium, and like even I think Demolition Man, like they all started wearing very similar clothing to de-escalate anger and stuff like that. And I think, like, in theory, if you make everyone the same, it would stop the. There would be less, but it
would come at the cost of something.
But then we're losing our individuality, and then I think we start losing our uniqueness, and I think there would start being more tensions over everyone being the same. So I think everyone would just start being mad at each other, opposed to, like, because they're not individuals anymore. And like, I went to, I was at SeaWorld at one point, and a gentleman, like, walked off to the side, and he took out his mat, put it down on the ground. He figured out which direction the sun was. I'm not entirely sure how all that works. Yeah. And he sat down and he did his praying.
Right.
And people walked by, and yeah, there's a few odd looks here and a few odd looks there, but there was no aggressiveness towards him. Maybe because there's a few of us giving death stares at anyone who looked like they were looking aggressive, but like he was in a place of a million cultures, and he was following through with his culture with hundreds of people walking by him for the X minutes that he did it, and no one interacted with, no one stopped him, and like negatively pushed their views upon him. And I think one of the reasons why is because of how much diversity there was there. I actually would go the opposite of, instead of trying to gentrify or make everyone the same, I would try to diversify it even more, bring more people in, more different, more cultures, different cultures. Let's have like more people from Creole and Jamaica and Brazil countries from Europe, countries from Asia, bring everyone in, and at that point, I think you start getting that might also help the racial tensions of, well, white people are no longer the majority, so you can't just start like thinking you're superior because like a lot of people feel that white people are they're superior because they're white because they are the most, and they are the people they interacted with the most, they are
Yeah.
in society the most. So I think where yes there is an idea where we try to make us all the same, I think if we actually diversified it even more that would fix the problem.
So I'm not necessarily saying all the same, and the only reason I bring this up is because I think to a degree that kind of is the story of me growing up. I grew up in a very very racist town, like a very racist city, Bishopville, South Carolina. I said this Monday, but you've never heard this. But basically, we had two high schools. One of them was called Robert E. Lee Academy. We have, yeah, dude. There was a little town or like community area, literally called Lynchburg. Like it's a weird place, man. Like so, like but what I saw was as a child, I saw okay. There are a group of people who are doing X things, but those X things keep having negative like repercussions to them. I was like, well, I don't want that. That shit sucks. That sounds terrible. And then I would see another group of people doing the opposite of that, and they seem to be having a good time. And so at some point, I realized that a lot of the things that those people did that looked like me, I was like, well, I don't want to do that because that seems really bad. That dude just got stabbed with a fucking pick in the head in high school. I don't want that to happen to me. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do this. And so luckily for me, I like those things. I think it would have been a different story if I tried them and then was like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this doesn't feel like me. So I understand that there's that aspect of it too. But I think somewhere along the way, I just kind of said, okay, there are things that will cause the ire of people in power for that to fall upon me, and I don't want that. Like I like it. If I'm playing this game with everyone else, it seems like that strategy is working, and it's worked so far for me. I'm gonna keep doing these things. Luckily, I liked those things, and I think it has helped me out growing up. I told the story on Monday about like I have a friend who I don't think he lives there anymore, but he might live in North Carolina now. We used to drive around. We played Yu-Gi-Oh together, like when I was younger. Before I even had a car, I was like just getting in high school, and dude had a Confederate flag on his truck. Listened to country music exclusively. We've sat down and played Yu-Gi-Oh at Books A Million every day, every Saturday that I could. We would go and drive to Georgia for fucking regionals and stuff. Good guy, genuinely good guy. And one of the things I think it was Mike Sanders brought up was probably a lot of the reason we had such a good connection was because he knew me. Like it wasn't because like sure he has a Confederate flag, so the immediate flag is like, oh, this guy's racist. Like there's obviously some negative connotation behind that, and I'm not saying that there isn't, because I've also talked about some experiences where that was the case. But in this specific thing was like, I think that goes both ways. Like as a black person, you can't look at every white person and say, oh, this person is an oppressor, or oh, this person is a part of a system that's fucking me over. It's like, you don't know that person. That person probably has nothing to do with any of the bad things that's happened to any of your great grandparents in the past. Just know, like, learn people. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you were saying before with like the other cultures. I bring that story up because I think both of our theories are viable, and I wish that there was like a control group that I could test them out with and figure out, oh, which one works. Because while one situation seemed to have worked for me, it definitely won't work for everyone, and maybe your solution might be ideal. the like injecting more. So
some of the issues we have though is like 19 years ago, that man that was praying at SeaWorld would have gotten destroyed, like beaten, because that would have been months or like less than a year after 9/11, and because of the racial tensions towards Muslims, that would have been very, very bad.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we have progressed so much towards less hatred towards Muslims is great.
Yeah.
Why are we still in the same boat with African Americans? Why have we not progressed? Like I feel like we're still. I feel like the racism towards African Americans has been the same from 1990 on. Like there was huge steps made in the 60s and 70s and even the 80s, and then like 1990 hit, and we're all like, all right, we took a bunch of giant steps for those 30 years. We're tired now. I think this is where we're going to keep it. Like they still need a lot of work to do that, and I think having more people be friendly and there being less hate will also start working where you're talking about of having people act the same. Like
that's true. Yeah, part of the reason why my formative years were the way they were was because we traveled a lot. Like I got to see different cultures and I got to talk to different people. So. And that's a luxury that some people don't have. So.
Yeah, and like some people are stuck in the same group of friends and things like that. I went to elementary school, and the area I lived, the elementary school had to bring a bus of African American students into the school so they can meet their quota. And I phrase it like that because that is how it was phrased to me as a child.
Yikes.
So like I went to all through elementary school. There, majority of my classes were white. There was maybe one or two African American children in my elementary school. I then went from that elementary school to a middle school where I believe there was less than 20 white people in the entire school. And I learned a lot of things very quickly. One of my friends, and I say friends is because we came from the same elementary school together, so we were automatically called another group of people a racial slur.
Nice.
And immediately ran on the bus because that's what you do. Is
of course.
You assault a group of people that can kick your ass, and then you
not realizing that you have to go to school the next day.
Yeah. Like so they were of course telling him when they got off the bus the next day that they were going to whoop his ass.
Yeah.
And that day, next day, day comes, and we're in class, and we all have a surprise auditorium meeting, and we all go to the auditorium, and there's a couple classes. I don't remember how many classes were there. I do, but I remember sitting in the auditorium, and I remember the guidance counselor walking up, and he asked the three kids in a row, including my friend, who said sweet vulgarities, to come with him for a second. Like, oh, hey, can you guys come here for a second? And they all walk out of the auditorium. And then like later on, we all go back to class, and I didn't see my three friends for X amount of time after that.
Nice.
And so later on, I found out from my mom that because she was friends with one of the other kids' moms, that when those three kids walked out of the auditorium, they were all jumped by police officers and slammed to the ground because that kid that said racial slurs brought a gun to school to protect himself.
Holy shit.
Now, getting a bunch of kids in one area when one of them has a gun.
Wait. Hold on. So the kids, which kids did they take out? The kids that said they were going to beat the other kid up?
No, the kid that
said the racial slur.
Yeah.
Fair.
He brought a gun to school.
Okay.
And his mom found out.
Gotcha. Okay.
And immediately called the school.
Gotcha.
And the school then did that. at that point, like my mom tried to explain this to me, and I was like, "Got it. Never say a racial slur ever in my life. This is what I've learned from this interaction. I'm done." And so, like, I guess culturally, there was a few instances along those lines where I was taught, "Hey, don't be dumb," and like, but my mother also explained it to me of like these words are words used in hatred and are only used in hatred. So like that's why these kids are mad and they threaten to hurt this other kid. Like at no point that kid should have brought a gun to school. Not defending that.
Sure,
and, that kid was expelled and I never saw him again. Like
how old are these kids, by the way?
Middle school, 12th grade or 8th grade, 7th grade.
Okay, all right, yeah.
But like,
man, it's so. This I'm not excusing this, but I find every time I think about like kids doing stupid shit like that, I remember just how dumb I was back then, and like it's just like, yeah, man, I don't know. It sucks to. Yeah, it's just a shit situation.
I don't resent any of the things I've done in my life. I wish I could have rephrased some of the things I phrased because I know I've hurt people with my words that I didn't mean to. However, I am very happy where I am now, so I would not want to change it in case I wouldn't.
Yeah.
But like, I do wish that I changed. Or I do wish that I had said nicer things to people along the way. In some ways, now I'm thinking back of it, I wish I had more of a realization of how much some African Americans are in pain because of what's going on in the world, and they can't deal with it. Like a few months ago, I was driving with a friend, and we drove by a police officer who was parked outside. I believe it was a car dealership or something, and he like drives up to the car dealership, gets out of his car, runs to the back, and opens up the back and brings out this giant ass gun and starts running towards the car dealership or whatever the building was. And I'm over here fascinated.
Yeah.
I'm like, what
is happening?
This is awesome. Like,
pull out the phone.
Yeah, there's a story here. What's going on? And we kept on driving and everything. And he was rattled. And I was a little confused. I'm like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, why are you rattled? And he did not say anything to the point, but I realize now he was rattled because he knows that there's going to be someone on the other side of that gun, and most likely that person is African American, and he wants to know why the cop is escalating to that size of a gun that quickly without any interaction. And like, what is causing that cop to go into there with a gun of that size? Like, why do you need to? Why are we starting like this? Why are we entering the situation at a 20? And his fear is there's an African American on the other side of it, and that African American is not going to walk away. And like, in some ways, so that's how what he's thinking. Where I'm thinking, there's a sweet story being told right now, and so like that thought process shouldn't be that different. It should not be that polar opposite. And I feel like in some ways we should be thinking all very similar.
Yeah, I could tell you from if that was me seeing that situation, I'd be somewhere in between both of those. It's like my initial thought would be like, holy shit, that is a M4. Why does he have that?
Yeah.
What the fuck is going on there that he would do that? But in saying that, it's not, in my head, it doesn't go straight to like, oh man, it could be a black guy on the other than that. I just want, like, in my head, I'm like, what is the cause of that? Now, afterwards, if I find out later, like, there was no reason for that, then that's when I get upset. That's when I lean more towards your friend's side, where it's just like, what the fuck, man? Like, what was the point of that? But I think that's kind of the thing that I'm if there's any message or whatever that I want specifically black people to kind of get, you going into an interaction with anyone who has that amount of power over you, this is not just black people, I guess, either. This is anyone. This is just a wise thing to do. You have to, and this sounds bad, and I get why this is hard, but you have to give these people the benefit of the doubt. You have to, because the moment you don't, that also escalates the situation. Like, that is so hard to do. I'm not saying that it's something that like, oh, you should just be doing this, dummy. Like, it's more of just like, it's something that you may have to learn over years and time and whatnot. But like, in the few interactions I've had like that mindset has saved me from way worse situations so many times, whether it has to do with the police, whether like even in the case of the we were talking about earlier of like where I had the taillight that was out and the cop pulls me over. I wonder how much differently that situation would have gone if I was just like, oh shit, like he's gonna pull out a gun. Like when you're nervous, like I don't know if you've ever been around like a dog that like a dog that's not used to being around humans, and the dog's nervous and you're nervous, and then the dog does something stupid like bite you or something of that nature. Whereas if the dog's nervous and it can tell that you're not nervous, like it kind of becomes oh, well, why am I upset now? Like that is the mindset that like I take into those interactions, and I think it's a good one. I people can take advantage of it, like anything. When you give anybody the benefit of the doubt, it's possible that people can take advantage of that. I've seen enough videos of cops planting fucking evidence and shit like that. So like it can happen. And what I would say is in those situations, that's the stuff, and like this situation with George Floyd, that's the stuff that I want to see police departments, governments come down hard. If you do something like that when you're in a position of like a police officer, there shouldn't be a question of like, oh, what is the penalty or it? No, if you kill someone, you're done. You're locked up for life. If you unjustly kill someone, you're done. You can have a trial, but once the trial is concluded, if you're concluded guilty of that crime, there's no suspension, there's no like unpaid leave or anything like that. Your badge is gone, your gun is gone. You can't buy guns later on in the future, like for yourself. Like you have proven that you are not trustworthy for that. Like all of these things go away. And that's the kind of like justice I want to see. I just want to make sure that when we're doing or executing that justice, that it's done to the right people. I want to alleviate I want there to be as few collateral damage as possible. If that makes any sense, but
it does. One of the things that would require to do that is we'd have to get rid of the police union.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean the police union is why.
That's true.
What's his name? Didn't get arrested immediately.
Yeah.
I don't even want to say his name. He doesn't deserve a name.
I don't remember his name, to be honest with you. So
Chavez. I don't know.
It doesn't matter. I mean, all four of them got charged.
Now, yes.
Now, yeah. I forget. I don't know those other guys' names.
Yeah, but like, and all of them weren't charged for the longest time because of the police union, and there's still, I believe, the union's still fighting for them. Like the union might be cutting their losses, but like I think the police union needs to be disbanded. I think that will, like, like as an off example, I want to tell a story here.
Okay.
The dog's going to be the police officer.
All right, cool.
My brother's going to be any black person.
Okay, got it.
All right. We're walking home from the grocery store, and I'm like, I don't know, 8, 9. My brother's 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And my brother's just like, I really need to use the restroom. Can I go off head home? We're walking down our street, and we live down a dirt road that was a dead end, so there was never any car traffic and everything. And my mom's like, yeah, and gives him the keys. So he starts running, And as he's running by, a Doberman Pinscher that was hanging out in the yard of one of our neighbors, or in the neighborhood yard of his yard, sees my brother running and immediately bolts after him and tackles him to the ground. Now, in the X seconds or whatever, my mom was really short. She covered that crowd so fast, and she knocked that dog off my brother and everything. And the dog had bit my brother and everything. My brother was running to go to the bathroom.
Yep.
Like, they just needed to go pee. And this dog saw somebody running and decided, oh, I need to take him down. Like, that, the fact that that dog was trained to do that is a problem. Like, and that's I feel like one of the biggest things of the police force is, like, they see a black man living and they immediately, it feels like that's what happens, is they chase him down. Now, my brothers ran by multiple dogs. I've ran by dogs as a child and growing up and things like that. And those dogs haven't ever chased us down. But I will always remember that dog chasing my brother down. So the issues you're going to have is everyone's going to remember George Floyd. Everyone's going to remember the girl that died 3 weeks before that, and the gentleman that died 2 weeks before that, and X weeks before that, and so on and so forth. We're going to remember those. And, like, sure, it is not every cop, but the fact that these cops can do that, and then it's so hard to discipline them and train them and get them changed. And, like, all four of those cops should have been fired immediately. Or there needs to be some sort of written, like, and maybe not docking pay, because that might be too...
Yeah, maybe.
That's probably way too complicated. It's way too complicated. But there needs to be an acceleration. And I do think cops need to have a tally. Like, if that cop had so many more aggressive interactions, he probably shouldn't have been.
He shouldn't have been. Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
and not like Disney attendance point system. I mean, like, you don't get these points back after you lose it. Like, you get a point, well, you got X more, and, like,
yeah,
it does suck because sometimes force is needed.
Yeah,
like, I worked in a movie theater at one point, and there was a person that was on several drugs in our movie theater, making a scene, making a disturbance, and him and his friends had to be removed. Security guard came over and they threatened the security guard. Security guards aren't cops, so they called the cops.
Yeah,
and I was a supervisor of the movie theater at the time, and we lead them in there, and the cop walks up to the guys to the group that was making the disturbance, and the guy's like, nah, I'm watching my movie. The movie was The Hills Have Eyes.
Nice.
And he's like, nah, I'm watching my movie, I'm staying here. And the cop's like, no, you're coming with me. Please get up and come with me. He's like, nah. And the cop's like, I said get up, and puts his hand on his shoulder. The guy then swings at the cop, which the cop then throws the guy across the seats. This guy was huge.
Yeah, probably not a guy you want to swing on.
Just throws the guy across the seats. And, like, they grapple the guy to the ground and pick him up and start dragging him out of the movie theater. And they grab his friends and they start dragging him out. And I ran to the door and opened the door for them so they can get him through. As they're walking down the movie theater aisle towards the door, the guy that's resisting slams his body into the cop, which the cop then responds by slamming the guy's head into the door frame of the door I'm holding.
Holy shit.
Is that excessive? Yes. This guy's swinging at the police officer, though. So is that too much at that point? They get the cop outside the movie theater. This movie theater was in a mall and on the second story of the mall, so they have them all sitting out It's late at night, so the mall's closed. So they're sitting down on the ground. All of them have handcuffs on, and the 2 or 3 cops are there. And the guy stands up, headbutts one of the cops in the stomach, putting that cop to the ground, body checks the other cop, putting that cop to the ground, and then starts running. Third cop shows up out of nowhere. Like, I don't, like, literally just appears.
Just
I think
materializes.
Escalators.
Yeah.
But he just appears out of nowhere, tackles this guy, and like ninja throws him into the wall. Like, I don't actually know what happens. Just the guy like slams into the wall. So this guy has been thrown across movie theater chairs, slammed into a door frame, slammed into a wall, and he's still kicking.
Yeah.
Like, whatever he's on is good shit.
Yeah.
They end up getting him downstairs. He kicked the cop away and starts running again, and 2 different cops had to tase him to put him down. Out of that entire story, in some ways, I still feel like the cops' actions were necessary. He was swinging at the cops, and he was big enough and strong enough to injure these cops and start trying to get away from these cops. Like,
yeah.
So probably the force was a little excessive, but so if we put a point system, every single one of these cops would have just got docked because they aggressively assaulted this person. They threw him against a wall, threw him over chairs, and tased him. But where there's stories like that, I feel like there's so many more stories of this guy was just living his life and now he's shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, yes, I understand your thought of not wanting there to be like splash damage.
Yeah.
But I think the splash damage is fine. And worst case scenario, what, that guy gets away handcuffed? Like, what's he gonna do? Run around handcuffed?
I guess the splash damage would also be for on the cops' end. Like, for instance, in your story of the dog and your brother, if the cop, let's assume that the person who's running is not in a good story, in your story, in your example, the guy is not committing a crime. He's not doing anything. He's just trying to go somewhere. He's just running. The cop just lets him run. It's fine. But what happens if that guy was doing something? Like, the cop still just let him go. So, like, I'm not saying that... I do think that anytime a cop would see someone just running, like sprinting, especially if they're not, like, wearing, like, athletic clothes or anything like that, that's going to draw attention. I'm not saying that... I don't know. That's a tough one. Because on one hand, it's like... it would draw my attention regardless. I haven't told you the story. Oh my God, that reminds me. There was a helicopter at our place of work one night. Did I tell you about this? Maybe? No. There was an escaped prisoner.
Yeah. Where did you work?
The place where we work.
There's a helicopter there.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was myself and another ex associate outside, and we were just talking like pretty late at night. And I see a guy come, like, just walking, no shoes. That was the first thing that kind of tipped me off. Like, what? He has no shoes, and I could hear chains, and I was like, oh, maybe it's just some like dude who like still believes in the wallet chain or whatever. But he just kind of walked. He looked at us, but didn't really say much, and he proceeded to walk back, in like towards the back of that location. And I stopped for a second. I was like, that's strange. And like seconds later, I could hear like helicopter, and I could see the spotlight coming. And I was like, hey, let's get out of here. Like, so like immediately, I was like, hey, we gotta go. And then he ended up calling the cops before I got a chance to, and I think they found him. But I don't know why that reminded me of that story, but whatever. That's a tough situation because I don't know if, like, what is a cop to do in that situation? Are they just to like allow that person to go on about their way, or you know what? Actually, there's a in thinking about that, I think there's a passive way to figure that out. You just follow them and figure out what they're doing. Like if it ends up just being like, oh, this person just went somewhere, like who cares? Who gives a shit? But then if you can see that there's some actual altercation going on, then yeah, intervene. So yeah, I guess that's literally what I was saying before. Where if we're giving the police the benefit of the doubt, they also should give us the benefit of the doubt too. So yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it does take some trust. But right now there is no benefit of the doubt. Like
on either side, I don't think.
Yeah, a few weeks, months, a long time ago, a few months ago, the guy was around our work and he was drinking on our premises.
I remember this. I was there for this. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had a machete.
Oh yeah.
And we asked him to please leave with his alcohol and his machete, and he left. And several people asked, "Why didn't you call the cops? Why did you interact with him? He had a weapon. Like, why didn't you call the cops?" And my thought process is, he's an armed black man that's been drinking.
This will not end well.
I don't think this would end well with this living. So there's the thought process of what if he's going to go and harm somebody else with that machete?
Sure.
If he's dumb enough to be walking down the street day drinking and carrying a machete, who's saying he's not going to use that machete on somebody?
That's true.
My other defense to this, though, is walking around with a machete isn't a crime.
It's true.
And we allow people to
carry firearms
next to a courthouse where the governor is after that person's been given death threats, and we still did arrest the people with the weapons. So, technically that guy did nothing illegal because,
if for whatever much this means, I think that is the right response to that. It's not to just immediately call the cops. I've dealt with a number of drunken people. Well, it's annoying, but I don't think it's police necessary. Yeah. And at least initially, it can escalate to that, but it almost rarely does. If they start
yelling and cursing and showing any sort of aggression, yes, call the cops.
Sure, yeah.
But there's very few interactions that just lead to a guy that just starts stabbing. And he started stabbing me.
Yeah. That was something that I was thinking about with that. This has happened too often. There's too many drunk people around there. Because now I'm remembering the one situation with the guy. I don't even remember the footage from the guy that was just sitting down stealing someone's drink, drinking their drink.
Oh
yeah. I was like, does this guy have some kind of shit on him? But I don't know. I feel like that turned out okay.
Yeah.
And that involved police. They didn't use excessive force. I think that was one of those situations where things kind of turned out okay. The guy was not black. He wasn't white either, but yeah, I don't know. Just I want to try to be optimistic about things, Brian. That's what I'm trying to do here. I don't know if that's the right play, but it's what I would like to do.
I think we need to be done with optimism. I think we need to realize that we have to change, and we need to tell our senators and our representatives and our governors and our city councilmen that we want statutes in place to protect us from the people who are supposed to protect us. And we need to change it. I feel like it needs to be across the board in every state, which means everyone has to start working together, which means we have to have someone in unity, which means we have to have somebody there to make everyone do everything together. And by make, I mean persuade. That's the biggest thing is, I feel like a lot of the issues going on and some of the reasons why police think they can do what they do now and is that cop literally murdered someone in broad daylight, being videotaped.
Yeah.
With the full thought process that he was going to get off. The look on his face, he's like,
Yeah, I saw that. It's a
care.
bad look.
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
like-
bad one.
This isn't gonna do anything. My union rep's gonna literally get me off in seconds. Like there's so much happening in society that's wrong for that cop to even have that look while that's happening. Like that look alone while that video is happening is showing you there's something wrong with society right now, and we need to fix it, and we need to overhaul everything. And I like, yes, there's a lot of people saying, hey, you want to change things, vote. And I agree to that in some extent. And I do actually think everyone should vote in the smaller elections and vote in and make sure. They should vote in the big election also. I think we need to change. I think what we'll change into isn't great, but it is change. Like we just need change. Yes, we're changing from poop to crap.
Yeah.
It's still change. We can then complain about crap instead of complaining about poop. It sucks, but I think if we start the changes, that we'll start progressing. Maybe we'll put ourselves in a position to where when we get the idealists that want unified and want everyone to be equal, we need to put ourselves in a position to where those guys can get elected. And currently they're not.
I think this 2020 election might have set us pretty far back from that.
Yes.
I know a lot of people like to point to 2016, but I think a lot of things happened in this 2020 election that kind of, if I were someone that wanted to run for that position, I would see what happened this year and kind of just go, why? Like, which is sad. Like,
I had a lot of thought process and I agreed a lot of the thought processes of Bernie Sanders in 2016.
Mhm.
I did not vote for Bernie Sanders. I voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 because I did not believe Bernie Sanders' platform would be accepted and would be able to move forward in 2016. So I was like, okay, Hillary Clinton can put us on a path where hopefully she won't break anything. Like that was my thought. It's like, hopefully she won't break anything.
Yeah.
That's and maybe put us and continue. Like I felt like we were put on a very good path of progress, of moving up, and hopefully she would just keep us on that path of moving up. Like hopefully she wouldn't just do something crazy and derail us. But and there was a large chance that we would just stay on that path. And like, sure, she want to accelerate that path. She want to push us up and. Like it, so there wouldn't have been much forward movement, but there wouldn't have been any backwards movement. I didn't view Trump as a real politician.
He's not. He's not.
Because I guess I just assumed that everyone wanted a politician to run our country. That was my bad for being wrong.
Yeah. Well, the thing is about that whole situation is like it doubles back to what I was saying before about like people not recognizing other people's opinions that are different than theirs. Like what happened and what's still happening now, which is why I get a little frustrated with it, is in 2016, there were a whole bunch of people who were pissed off and felt like they weren't being treated fairly. Now, whether or not these people were treated fairly or not is up for debate, but they felt that way. But those people couldn't voice that opinion because they would lose their jobs. People would call them racist. People would call them like all kinds of stuff, and they would get labeled. So what did? They didn't say shit. What they did do was they voted for the guy in the party that they wanted, and that happened to be Trump. But no one knew about it. All the polls said that he was going to lose, and no one knew about it because you stifled the opposition's voice. Now, had those people been able to voice their opinions, and maybe the Democratic Party would have heard them and said, oh, you know what? There is some validity to what you're saying, and we'll try to fix that. You probably would have had Hillary in office. But because everyone was like, if you say some shit that we don't like, deplatform you, cancel you. Like, and that shit still happens. And that's the thing that I really, really want to change. And it doesn't seem like it's working that way. It seems like it's going, like it's become the norm to just expect that. If you say something that's off the list of what the majority of, I hate using left and right, but for just simple speaking sake. But if you say something that's off left, people are ready to crucify you, and it sucks. Like, you could disagree with it. I disagree with it a lot of times, but you need to be able to have a conversation with these people, because otherwise you're going to get a blindsided fucking thing again. It's the exact same thing that happened in 2016. Like, no one saw that shit coming until it happened, and they were like, oh no, fuck. Like,
apparently a bunch of polls right now are saying that Biden has the biggest lead that any president has ever, or anyone has ever had in polling at this point in time. And in some ways, I want to think that's true.
I do too.
Like, I would love to think that's true. I don't want him to be president, but I want change. So he's our only option. And
which is why this system sucks.
Yeah.
It's trash, man. It's really bad.
However, my other thought process is, I mean, maybe the reason why they voted for Trump is because Trump did a ton of illegal, or was a very shady character. Biden also looks like a very shady character. Maybe they'll go back to maybe
I like this guy.
Maybe that's their problem. Maybe Biden's the right call because he's shady.
I just think. Go ahead.
And in some ways, I don't actually think he's that shady. I think there is a lot of press against him right now, and the negative press against him that is going on, there's a lot of holes in it, and it seems very weird. So it feels like your common politicians making shit up to defund it. But because of our two-party system, where no matter what, they can literally say Biden killed MLK, and people are going to believe that.
Yeah.
Because they just want to believe the other side is a bad guy. And the same with the other side. And I feel like in some ways Trump embraced that. Trump knew that was what was going to happen, and he embraced that. And he's like, I'm just going to say the most whack shit anyways, because I'm just going to say that the other side's trying to get me down, because they are. So I could say it, do whatever I want. And like, I hate to say it, but in some ways, I don't think this is an act. I think Trump might be a genius. And I think there's two things. Yeah. Trump's either the biggest idiot in the world, or he is the biggest genius in the world. Like, there is no in between. He is either the dumbest idiot that has ever existed.
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know what that was. It's fine.
Or he is an absolute mastermind. And I'm fearful if he's a mastermind. Because that means we're entering bad territory.
Yeah.
We're entering Hitler territory at that point. Like, Hitler convinced an entire nation to commit genocide. Like, what? Like,
I think the only difference is I guess the one good thing, the one credence to our two-party system is there will always be a party in opposition to that. It will be I think it's damn near impossible, which is why I think they should get rid of it. I think it's impossible for a Republican or Democrat to try to like appease enough people from the other side because of just those titles. Like, you get rid of those titles, I think things would change drastically, man. Like, I may, this could just be me being uneducated. There may be a bigger reason for them, but for the life of me, I can't think of why they still exist. It just seems like a very arbitrary thing. Like, are you familiar with Andrew Yang, the guy that was? Yeah. Like, that guy had my vote the entire time, and this two-party system failed him drastically. Whereas I think if if it didn't exist, he'd be one of our candidates, like for sure, like hands down. It'd be either him or Bernie, like one of the two.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just
Do you think if Bernie tried to run on it, because Bernie's independent? Do you
Yeah.
think if Bernie tried to run on the Republican ticket, they would have looked at him, like batted an eye? Do you think they would have even batted an eye at him, or do you think they would have just like scoffed him when they got 0 votes? Like instead of him going for the Democratic and him actually went for the Republican ticket, do you think there would have been any conceivable way?
I think it would have been possible. But there are a lot of things that he would have had to
Forgo.
yeah. I don't think he would have been able to be so vocal about a lot of his policies.
Oh.
I think he could have. I think it could have worked. Same thing with Andrew. I think Yang
Maybe
could
he
have.
did.
Yeah, I think he could have. He could have ran on the other party as well. But I don't know.
Do you think? I actually feel I actually like Yang a lot. I actually feel what happening with the Democrats happened with the Republicans in 2016, and then somehow Trump made it work. But like, I don't think I think Trump was trying to went for presidency to make a point.
Yes,
I think that was his biggest thing.
Yeah.
I don't think he actually wanted to win.
Nope.
And so he ran on the Republican ticket, and Rubio and there was one other guy was his biggest proponents. Like basically Trump was the wild card because people wanted to see, we tried to put real politicians against the Democrats and we lost. Let's put this wild card in.
Yep.
And that's why he was getting so many votes. And then like halfway through the voting, one of the guys, like basically there were two good like candidates on the Republican side. Rubio, I know I'm calling Rubio good, even though I don't think he would have been good, but justifiable keeping us on the path.
Right.
And then one other guy, and they were eating up all these votes, and then all the people who just wanted a crazy left wing, like you're Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
Those guys were all going for Trump. And so Trump was still getting votes, but Trump was still behind both of them. But because those two were just eating all the normalization of votes up and splitting the numbers, and there was like one other person that was a little bit behind vote, getting all those, one of the dudes just backed out.
Yeah.
And he backed out like halfway through. And at that point, like all those people like didn't want the other guy that was normal in, so they just went to Trump because Trump's like, he's the next number, so let's just go to him. And Trump ended up winning it, and I think it surprised him and it surprised everyone. And Rubio also didn't try to fight the fight anymore. Like when he saw that it was him and Trump, and he was a little bit behind, he's like, all right, now we'll just put him up, and because he wanted to keep the party unified.
Yep.
And he made that sacrifice to make sure the party was unified. Even though I think there's a chance he could have beat Trump, he made the sacrifice to keep the party unified because they would have been fighting each other and ripping each other apart. And by the time they got to the primaries, no one was gonna like.
I kind of feel that happened with the Democratic Party. Yeah.
That's exactly what happened in the Democratic Party. That like so many people didn't vote for Hillary because of what happened with Bernie, and because of that, Hillary lost. And like you already had the people that weren't going to vote for Hillary no matter what because of the emails, which whatever. Like that's
sure.
Like a lot of people are going to say that's a big deal, and yes, I understand it is a big deal. However,
your options.
Look where we're at. Yeah. This is on you, email people. I like you see all these bumper stickers and things like that. That's like any functional adult for 2020 and things like that, and that's where we've been since 2016. Is literally we're just not putting a functional adult up for office. Like I think Biden would have been great running in 2016. I think the negativity towards Biden, either if it was real, would not have shown up and no one would have known about it still, or no one would have had the ability to fabricate it against him if it's fabricated, because he would have been running on that high of being a vice president, getting all this stuff done. There wouldn't have been enough fabrication to break
that. Yeah.
But he had personal issues come up and he couldn't run, and that makes sense. Like his, I think his son died or something, and completely understandable. Now he's not. No one's remembering what happened 4 years ago. No one remembers his vice presidency, and they're only thinking about the bad stuff that happened, and they're not thinking about all the good that had happened. And because of that, they're able to fabricate stuff or find the dirt and bring out the stuff that is bad. Like if he did do those things that people are accusing of, no, I don't think he should be presidency. However, our president did do those things, admitted to doing those things, and is still president right now. So, like, they're both not good people. He's been buried. Like Biden was buried. He was perfect in 2016.
Yeah.
He's been buried now. He's not good now. I actually think Sanders would have been good now. I think he could have won now. However, going based off Trump winning last in 2016, I guess he would have won in 2016 too, and I just didn't know.
That's true.
I was wrong. I was hedging for bets, and in some ways, maybe that was I was falling in the two-party system motif also of I want a Democrat to win, so I'm going to vote for Hillary as our best chance to win, because I think Hillary would have been better than any of the Republican side, which I still believe Hillary would have been better than the entire Republican side. But, I don't think she was going to be a great president. The Republican side didn't bring anyone, that year. And that shows because Trump won.
I've often thought about this. If we're going to keep the two-party system, I would... Somebody told me this is a bad idea because nothing would get done, but I don't think that's true, because I think some things, especially the important things, have to get done, so they have to come to a consensus about stuff. I say we just elect a president from both parties. There's a Democratic president and a Republican president, and the two of them make those decisions. I think that would solve so many problems. You wouldn't have to worry about the competition between those two very obviously different ideas. Instead, you could find the best of both of those ideas, and then the best of both of those ideas are forced to work together to make things good for both sides. It just seems to work to me.
I think I don't think the parties should actually exist, and I also don't think
that would be ideal.
I don't think there should be, and there's no way to do this, but I don't think funding for a president should be advertised. So, if the National Rifle Organization, the NRA, donates $2 million to a politician, to a president, to a senator, whatever, the politician does not know it is from them. And at the same time, if the NRA says, "Hey, I just donated $2 million to your thing," they get fined
X amount of money. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
I don't and which can start paying for our roads, because that still happened. I'm going to donate $2 million and take the $2 million fine, and we can pay that to help. This idea sounds great.
Actually sounds really good. We're solving it. We're fixing the problem.
But so that way you don't have these politicians there's I don't know exactly how lobbying works and the lobbyists and between senators and houses and things like that, but I do know there's a lot of corporations that pay for politicians to be where they are so they can enact rules that favor the corporations. And I feel I still think the corporations should donate to get these politicians where they need to go, but they has to be anonymously. So the corporations are no longer trying to force you to see their views, or like they're no longer buying you off to see their views. They're buying you because they think your views
They believe
will get you where you need to be.
Yeah.
And that way these politicians who know how to talk the talk can talk the talk about like the NRA and things like that, and get them to donate to them, and then actually not have to worry about, well, I know that they donated $4 million to me, so I have to make sure I put policies in place that make them happy.
I wonder if there's a true way to keep that anonymous though.
There's not.
Yeah.
Not with today's technology, and that's the biggest problem. But I feel like that would that would help a lot of issues. I don't think it would solve it, but it'd help a lot of issues, because I feel our two-party systems are basically being bought off by X corporations that have opposing views, and that's why it's us versus them type thing. And yeah, the two-party system needs to go, but at the same time, then you'll have corporations just buying people off.
That's
So
true.
you'd have to find some way of, which is probably happening now also, you'd have to find some way of keeping the corporations out of politics. And I am curious why we don't look at Canada and how Canada does it, or like how their electoral system works, or how... Actually, I don't think we want to look at the European nation right now. I think
It's not good.
I don't know the full story, but I think they all had this radical idea that would never actually work, but you like talk about supporting it because like that means you're good for change and you want change, and people talk like, yo, he thinks Brexit's a good idea, that should be changed, and then like they all forgot to get together to find out who was actually voting for Brexit, who was it that they voted for. They're
like, oh shit,
oh shoot, we didn't want that. Guys, this isn't actually plausible.
Like, can we go back and fix that? You're like, no. We're like, oh shit. Like
guys, no, seriously, this doesn't work. Well, you voted for it.
Yeah.
Whew.
Shit. I think we should probably cut it here. We have been going for like 3 hours.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay.
All right.
No, this is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was good talking to you.
Yeah,
absolutely. I hope I didn't say anything offensive.
I don't think you did. I feel like I probably did, but that's okay.
That's fine. These topics are hard.
Yeah.
Like it is hard. I do think people need to talk about it. Yes, I support where that woman got fired for using racism as a weapon. At the same time, I do understand the thought process of people losing their jobs for expressing their views. It sucks, and that shouldn't happen. I say this after I've already said this woman should be fired for weaponizing racism.
I have something I want to talk to you about that off air, because that's interesting. But yeah, it's a weird time to have an opinion. It sounds like somehow the beginning of comedy stand-up special title or something. But
I had several other actually comments about comedy and stuff. However, it moves from racism to like sexism, and then like homosexual jokes and like sexuality jokes,
right?
And the mental capacity, especially for the sexuality jokes, of how them being funny, sure is haha funny, but at the same time you have all these people that are afraid to be who they are, and these jokes harden their fear. And so like it's getting better now, but in 2000 to 2015 or 2010ish, it was really bad. And I think the sexuality bigotry ties in a lot to racial bigotry also, and like they're very similar concepts, but at the same time they're so vastly
they're different. Yeah, they're
Like-
different and similar in some ways.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
emotionally, they're very similar
Yeah.
of how they can affect people, but how they are attacked is different because racial is you can see
Yeah.
like almost always see
Yeah.
like sometimes there are Hispanics that look white and they don't
That's true. Yep.
don't
Yeah, they
get-
don't. Yep. Yep.
hit with the racialness as much, but like
That's one of the things Steven talked about. But
was racial like Hispanic
well, like him,
racially-
because like it's possible to see him and not, and it's possible to see him and think that he's white. Like that's a possible thing.
yeah.
And sometimes that's not the case, or sometimes people make that decision and it's for his betterment, and sometimes it's not. Like it's just yeah.
Like 18 to 24ish, I was out in the sun a lot. Mostly Hispanic people thought I was Hispanic. And then they would get mad at me because I wouldn't talk to them in Spanish.
I'm like I can't.
I'm like, I can't, I'm sorry. Please stop being mad at me. Like more than 5 times.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yes.
But yeah, thank you, man. If you want to do this again, there's always room to do that.
Maybe we can talk about happy subjects.
That's dude.
Maybe not right now. If we go
Yeah.
there to get
Yeah.
closer, we should still be talking
Yeah,
about
this,
stuff 'cause
yeah.
it still needs to be
I
talked about.
Sunday I get to talk to this woman about like the vegan diet. I am looking so much forward to that. After these last 2 days, man, I cannot wait. But then it's right back into this. So yeah. Steven's been yelling at me about that too, because it's like, yeah, man, you stream and we talk about video games and all this good stuff, and then he gets here and it's just like, all right, so what are your thoughts on like this policy and this? And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but we just literally he keeps end up being on the one where it's not that, but
we kind of went from racial to political, but and then yeah, so there's lots of things to talk about, and I think there's a lot of interesting subjects that need to be vocalized, and I think
Yeah.
people should be talking more. And like, I want to agree with people, but at the same time, I would love for people to maybe think that if they know where we're thinking from, they can start moving that way. It is good to hear that you're not mentally as hurt by the racial actions of police
Yeah.
officers as much as
some people,
some people
yeah.
are, because I do know some people are
Yeah.
very emotionally hurt by these, and that's why in the past few weeks I've been getting woke is not how I want
Oh
to say
no,
that.
there it is.
Hey, good night.
Yeah.
I'm actually not going to finish that thought. Getting woke is we're gonna end this.
It's good. That's a good point to end on. It's great. I don't know. I've been making these for like, Jesus, you're episode 27, I think now. But yeah, I just got them up on Spotify. So if you have Spotify, check it out. Same title, just about anything. Yeah, I don't really have anything. I guess I have a Twitch channel you can watch. I hate promoting my Twitch channel on here because there was one guy that came in there. He was like, "Hey, I watched the podcast," and he came in there and it was just me playing like fucking Valorant and like Arena or some shit, and I'm just like, yeah, it's different. I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, that these things exist. Do you have anything you want to shout out or anything like
I
that?
don't have anything
Okay,
really to shout out. I've seen his Twitch when he's playing Arena. He gets mad.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. not as often now because
Okay.
things are a little bit more tame, and I'm just playing a better deck, I guess. But
Okay.
But thank you again. Do all the subscribe stuff if you like what I make and all that good stuff, and I'll see you next time.